We all remember in Tafshinun, when it was 40 years from Nisias, the Rebbe stark gekocht in the Nekuda of a call in Inish Adaiti the Rebbe, Adar Shnin. The mother says, in the 40 years, a Talmid starts to grasp the teachings and the lessons of his teacher only when he reaches 40 years old. So standing now exactly 40 years from the Tekufa, which started Tafshin Membeis, it is a schus to sit together now with Chassidim from around the world and discuss the event then and how to apply it now in our lives. Everything that the Rebbe spoke about in those days, in Tafshin Membeis, obviously we all know as Chassidim was not limited to that time. Rather, it is bli gvul, it has no gvul, and it's applicable to all times in all situations. So we have with us today 5 distinguished Chassidim. I'll introduce each one as they're called on. To start today's panel, I would like to ask Rabbi Sholom Duchman, the Menal of Kel Chabad, who was zeicha to be from the Rebbe's shluchim to Eretz Yisroel, and Adi Yimazeh, he does his shlichus b'mesir and nesino l'arichas yom rishon tevis. Rabbi Duchman, you were a bacher in the Lamitz, growing up with the Rebbe through the mitzvah tanks, and afterwards through when the Rebbe launched each mitzvah. You're someone amongst all of us. I don't think anyone here was on the panelists was zeicha to that to be in both tekufas. Can you, in a way, describe to us the transition of the times when you were a bacher, in those years when every other fabring and another mitzvah was coming out and another nuhira, and how it sort of went into the mems with the shturdim of everything that went on then? L'chaim, l'chaim. Rabbi Sholom Duchman, do you hear us?
I hear you very well. Just trying to think, about the transition. Very, very difficult. I know I had a transition. I went from being a Parchat Yaman. It was definitely a transition in my eyes. In the Rebbe's eyes, I don't think it was a transition. I think it was only more stronger and greater and better than ever before. As Baruch Hashem, we think, as the years go by, we see the reality. The Rebbe becomes stronger. Everything. So I don't understand exactly what the question is and what you want to address about transition. Very difficult. Either you have to clarify something I don't understand.
So you were a shliach already in Tafshin Membeis for a few years. Is there something that's out from the shliach perspective, going back to that year, that you can recall that you can share with the Elam?
I can't but this is again not the Rebbe was very, very involved. I'm
sorry, Rabbi Duchman, it's hard to hear you. It's a little choppy. Is there something wrong with the Wi-Fi, or?
I have no idea. Is it better now?
Hopefully. Okay.
Again, Tafshin Membeis, Baruch Hashem, was again from a personal perspective. Tafshin Membeis was as all the time. Vaad has the unique school that the Rebbe was the Nasi of it, and also Rabbi was the of it, and the Rebbe took a direct interest. Single aspect part of the table. Amish in the details of the staff of the institution, of the office of the institution, of the administration of the expenses of the income of the was in an unbelievable, incredible way. And it happens to be phase was we saw the incredible involvement, single aspect of these terms about. Now you have to understand that it is more the administrative part, because my part of Chabad is running more the fundraising, not the what Chabad is involved. But again, yes, human base has been unique, incredible year. This part in my shlichus.
Okay, we're going to get back to you soon. We just the reception is a little off. I'm not sure if it's our end or it's your phone, but it's just a little choppy.
I got. I'll try another. Okay.
All right, please. I'd like to get back to you. Okay. Thank you very much, Rabbi Duchman. Next, we have our next panelist from Postal, Iowa, Rabbi Yisroel Noach Vogel. Rabbi Vogel, you were zeicha as a bacher to be in 70 in that year. In Michoel, the Abish bench, Baruch Hashem, with the Baal Zikar and Nifla. You're able to share with so many young Chassidim today who benefit so much from your Zikrinus. We've seen on the WhatsApp messages and other ways how you convene your messages in a beautiful way. You should continue doing so and you should continue inspiring the younger generation. So, L'chaim. I understand that you were a Bachir Membes, and if you can please just share with us some Zikrinus from then. From Tishrei.
Tishrei. So, I was able to come to the Rebbe then. I don't have a Gashra Zikr Chaim right now, but can you hear me or is it choppy?
We could hear you.
Okay. I was learning there in Yisroel, and I found it hard to travel to the Rebbe, monetary, and I had to put together some money. And one of the interesting things was the Hanhala in Chabad asked me to down for the Amud Rashon in Kippur. He gave me $100 for it. And $100 then is not like today, but whatever. It wasn't that much, but it helped. I borrowed from Rebbe. I borrowed from him $100, and I put together a few $100 to be able to come. And they ended up coming I arrived on Thursday of Haolami. The Kriyas is the same as this year. So I arrived on Haolami, Thursday Haolami. And one of the first things that that hit me at that time, as far as I can remember, is the Rebbe was very, serious, yimon. Even when the Rebbe was ma'ayiv for the simcha, it seemed to me like the Rebbe was demanding, but the Rebbe wasn't, how should I say, happy. I don't know. That's what it seemed to me as for a week to understand where the Rebbe's feelings and so on. But this is the way it seemed to me. The Rebbe was not the simcha. It was demanding the Rebbe himself. And this is Thursday night, Friday when the Rebbe came.
Rabbi Vogel, it's a bit difficult to hear you.
Right. What could we do? We could change machines maybe. So it seemed to me like the Rebbe was like the Rebbe was not very simple. Very interesting thing that I noticed on, maybe if I speak slower, it'll help.
Yeah, try.
Okay. Friday night, when the Rebbe came into the Rebbe's face looked completely different, as if all wrinkles smoothed out, as if all daigas were off. And the Rebbe turned around after Meir, and in those years, when the Rebbe would say there was no second tender, the Rebbe would turn around to the right side of his stender, and leaned on the stender, usually his right arm on the stender, and that's how, facing the Olam, that's how the Rebbe would say it. This time, Friday night, the Rebbe stood in front of
Rabbi Vogel, 1 second. Rabbi Kesseler, I'm sorry, do you mind just muting yourself? I think we're good. I think there was some background noise. Okay. I'm sorry, Rabbi Vogel, please continue.
Yeah, no problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this time, the Rebbe stood in front of the stender. Instead of leaning on the stender, he stood right in front of the stender, and he put his right hand sort of behind him on the stender, not leaning, just put his hand down. And the Rebbe began the Sikha by saying, there's a halacha that, I can't remember exactly the order of the Sikha, but I remember this is right in the beginning of the Sikha. The Rebbe said there's a halacha that by Sheva Brachas, you don't need Aponim Chadashes on Shabbos. Why? Because Mo'er Ponov Shel Adam is different on Shabbos. Person, his face shines. He looks different. And that, Pashat, looking at the Rebbe, then I saw it, how the Rebbe was completely different. It was shining, his face was so happy. Just remind you for a second, the Rebbe put his hand down on the stender before the Sikha. Zum Allem Ersten Good Shabbos. And the whole Elam answered Good Shabbos. And then the Rebbe started the Sikha. It's interesting also about, this is only the second year that they were dancing in the street. It started, as everybody knows, in Tashin. The Tashin Membeis, this is what I heard from my friends when I came to New York. Some of them were not sure 100% if the Rebbe is going to encourage the singing and dancing in the street, or if the Rebbe is going to say sichas every night like he did in Tashin Memala. They were not sure. The Michoel, the Rebbe did say a sicha every night of Sukkot. And if I'm not mistaken, even that Friday night, the Olam was still did not feel 100% sure that the Rebbe is going to speak. That was my feeling then. Again, I can't know if I'm right or wrong. I wasn't there in Tashin and Aleph. But the Rebbe spoke every night, was encouraged the singing. But it was not very, very long. I don't remember how long the dancing in the street took, how long the dancing lasted for in the street. But I do remember at some point dancing upstairs in the small zal. And it was a small circle, we were dancing around the bim in a small zal. And I was the only one who still had his voice, because I wasn't in New York before, on the first days of Yom Tov. And I was singing as much as I could. And at some point, it's whatever, I stopped. And when I stopped, the circle stopped. And I said, this is like, you don't have to rely on one person to dance. So somebody says to me, what do you think? You weren't here the first day, so you have kayach to sing. We already lost our voices. But if I remember correctly, that was about 1 o'clock. And that was all. There was no long dancing then. And the first time there was long dancing, I think Rabbi Kesseler wants to make a comment over here. Just let me finish the sentence. There was long dancing was Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe said such a sikha, which is actually the last night, so to speak, of long Simchas V'Zasheva, because Sunday night is already Shana Rabbah. So Motzei Shabbos is the Ushpiz of the Rebbe Marash, the member of Rebbe. They were speaking very strongly. They were speaking about the Parsha of the Chumash, the Chitas of that day, the Zeis HaBracha. And this time the Rebbe stood on the left side of his stender. I think that was quite unusual. So his left arm was on the stender, and with his right arm, Moshe, when it came to saying the word v'zois, was pointing with his finger downwards. I think the Rebbe's hand was all the way down, but there was pointing with his finger v'zois habracha. And very, very sturmlich about how you should continue to dance. And the Rebbe said, "Kunst again, the Kluginker, genug, Mäckchen gehen schlafen." He sagt their name. He continues to dance. And that was the first night, I think, the music went till 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember actually, I don't know if Rabbi Greenberg, Yoska Greenberg is on the line yet, but I remember the next morning, we're talking about how the dancing went and so on. And he was saying that him, after the music finished, him and a number of Bachrim went over to 770 and they continued to dance outside. They said they're going to continue to dance until the Rebbe comes to 770. And he said when the Rebbe came into 770 and he saw the Bachrim still dancing, the Rebbe gave a very strong encouragement with his hand as they were singing outside 770. You want to interrupt here a second? I thought somebody had something to say.
Rabbi Kesseler, would it add something?
No. Okay. I mean, I can just continue day by day, so what I remember. Actually,
Rabbi Vogel, we'll go back to you soon. Thank you very much. We have with us Rabbi Yosef Kesseler, Shliach of the Rebbe in Montreal, who was a younger man then. However, he was zeicher to be at the Tishrei Tafshirman Beis, and the Erev Rosh Hashanah Farbringen of that year, meaning his Chavtes Elamim Aleph, going into Tafshirman Beis, the Rebbe started a new campaign, a new mitzvah about registering all adults into the Sefer Torah Klali. The year before, on Yaf Nissen, the Rebbe spoke about the idea of uniting all Yiddish Kinder, all Yaldi Yisroel in the Sefer Torah. And there was a Yisroel that there should be a Sefer Torah as well for those over Bar Mitzvah. So Rabbi Kesseler, if you can speak about that Tekufa and the mitzvah. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim. Do you hear me clear?
Yes.
I don't know if it started the mitzvah of the children's Sefer Torah Yirav Nissen, but the Mem Beis, Mem Aleph, we all know was Shnas Hakel. A murder student with a tremendous student from the Rebbe Negei Shnas Hakel. In the course of Shnas Hakel, the Rebbe was very much speaking about the Sefer Torah for Yaldi Yisroel. How it came about, I mean, the Rebbe took it in a completely different note and at a completely different level. But if I bring in, I think with Erev Shoshana, he said a gentleman came over to him and asked him why Dafke, the children, was Hevel She'ein Bechait, what were the people Sheyesh Behem Chait? And the Rebbe took it and said, yeah, we should do that. And the Rebbe started Erev Rosh Hashanah ushering into Tafshimem Beis was the Mitzvah Sefer Torah. Bichlal, on a side note, although Mem Aleph was a tremendous year, I mean, everyone remembers how Mem Aleph, I don't know if there was a panel in the game Mem Aleph, but the Shnas Hakel, the Siches and the dancing, which was going on with the music every night, I mean, it's intensified every night, till it became a Seder Masuda from that, but it took time. The first night of dancing around entire Khan Heights, to pass through the Rebbe's house and as a But throughout the year of Shnas Hakel, in the beginning of Mem Beis, the Rebbe talked also Elza Hemshech from Hakel. But your Aleph Nis Mem Aleph. I mean, people remember then the Tavshin Lamed Beis, the Shivim Shana, what kind of a year it was, what a tremendous spiritual uplifting was the ganz klar Yisroel, the Rebbe Shnas Hashivim. Came to Mem Aleph, your Aleph Nissen, there was a whole sikha, the first two sikhas, a whole ariches, a chorus atoi for the Rebbe that he has reached, and he's going into Gevuras, which was a tremendous thing. The Rebbe is notifying that it's a new tkufa coming up, going into Gevuras. It's Bishmein Shana. If I'm not mistaken, that he even expressed himself with a Shechiyonu the Kimonu, on Hashem Malchus. So when Tishrei Mem Beis came about, there was a tremendous excitement by the Chassidim that here we're talking about the Tishrei, the Rosh Hashanah, and everything of Mem Beis, which is the Rebbe reaching the Shmeinim Shana. But the whole Tishrei was consumed with the Rebbe spoke a lot about the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, but it was consumed by the ganze mitzvah of Sefer Torah. Rebbe was very serious about it. The Rebbe Mamish gave the impression as a pikuach nefesh Mamish for every Jew to write a Sefer Torah. But interesting enough, on Rosh Hashanah, the Fabrengen, the Rebbe spoke about the Kudah that should start from Torah. Because we're talking about Ksiva Sefer Torah, it should start from Torah. It should start with Talmidei Hatmimim, and Rebbe also mentioned the Srifka, and therefore the Rebbe said to the Talmidei Hatmimim, this is how we should start the Ksiva Sefer Torah. The Rebbe said those who were also the Amot Mimim should also be included. They should be able to have the schus to write, to buy on Eis in the Sefer Torah. Or Megia. Remember, the Rebbe was Madgish, he could either write or Magia. That's how it started. Then the Rebbe continued, and he said that those who were once Tmimim could also do it, and they could be Yotze and the Sheyim of Neim of Neseyim. They should write. So initially, that's how it started. The Rebbe asked the Anhola to immediately make a call for action, a call a meeting. I don't remember clearly, but I remember there was a sifa. Could be Rabbi Duchman remembers more. There was a big asifa by the Shag in the office upstairs in his house. And all the Zikna Chassidim were there. The Mendel Futterwas, I remember, was there. Rabbi Michoel, Berkechein, the Shag himself, Rav Mentlich, Rabbi Askin. And Rabbi Askin asked me to come along. There was a very geschmacke meeting, how to go through the whole thing of the Sefer Torah, to reach out to all yeshivas. But before there was a chance, the Rebbe broadened the entire mitzvah to ganz Klal Yisroel. There was then a sudden plötzlich gesicha, but then it wasn't usually at all. The night before Erev Yom Kippur, the Rebbe said a sicha after Ma'ariv. The same curious as this year. So I think it was Tuesday night. And the Rebbe had a sicha, suddenly a sicha after my. And then the Rebbe said, everyone is included in the Sefer Torah. Not only everyone is included, if you know someone, and you know that, and he should have a Sefer Torah, everyone should have, you could be zeicha for him, shalei b'fanav. Buy for him, I learned the Sefer Torah. And it got more and more intensified with the Rebbe till it came out late in the year, Amakos of the Sefer, and that those who have written the Sefer will be saved. It was language where the Rebbe used how the world is crumbling and falling apart, and the Sefer Torah will save the world. This was the Nekuda from the ganze Inyan, from Tishrei, Mem Beis, then they get the Mitzvah Sefer Torah. I'm sure there was other things. By the Akofis, those who remember, by Akofis, by Simchas Torah, Mem Aleph, we all remember, we all heard of that the Rebbe himself danced. Unfortunately, the Rashag was not feeling well, and the Rebbe himself danced, and then there was Akofah for the children, together with the children. This is a separate pasha for itself. But it was also by Tovshim and Beis, side the night of Shmini Atzeret, side the night of Simchas Torah, before the 5th Akofah, and before the 6th Akofah, there was a Sicha, and the Rebbe explained what the fifth koffer, the sixth koffer, midas Yisroel, and so on. And there was the Rabbanim.
Rabbi Kesseler, sorry, there's some background noise.
What?
Levi, can you please, others?
I don't hear you.
Levi, can you please mute the name something different? Okay, Rabbi Kesseler, can you please repeat yourself about the Rebbe said a sicha during Hakafis?
Yeah, before the fifth koffer and before the sixth koffer, both Shmini Atzeres and on Simchas Torah. And by each sicha now, I don't remember clearly. I'm sure there's other people on the panel who have a much better zikaron than I have. But one of them about the Rabbonim, the first night, and then Tzivus Hashem was the second night, and also there was a special hakofer for the Ksiva Sefer Torah. But was sicha explaining. This is. I don't want to take too much time. We'll continue later, Mitzvah Hashem, if there will be time, but let other people participate. I would like to hear what other people have to say. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Yeah, l'chaim, l'chaim. Our next speaker is a known historian in Chabad, and especially of Der Shvi, as well as an erech of the Sefer of Teches V'Sichos Kedesh, which thousands of Chassidim around the world owe a tremendous amount of gratitude to. Rabbi Michoel Seligson, a mashpia in Olotero and a mashpia in the community of Crown Heights, who was zeicha to put together a Gurevitch Shashelos Yachas, which many of us know is the Sefer Hayom Yom, which basically documents the accomplishments of every Nasi and every generation. And for the Rebbe's erech, Rabbi Seligson was zeicha to compile it, and was zeicha for the Rebbe to be magiah it and to make corrections. Often it would be a few drafts back and forth between the Rebbe and Rabbi Seligson. And without further ado, I would like to ask Rabbi Seligson to please discuss the erech on Tafshin Mem Beis in the Sefer Shashelos Hayachas. L'chaim.
I'm not muted.
You're good. We hear you.
You hear me? Okay. Basically, we're working on the Hayom Yom in Tafshin Mem Aleph, and it was towards the end of the year. Mit Arangishim Simrem. It was then Rabbi Yosef Sagala was working with me, and mit Arangishim to the Rebbe that we're planning to finish it with Korev. So the Rebbe wrote a long answer. Azivis Ishnas Hakel, was a Chayelo, mit a ganz Arichos Poshet Idu that the Rebbe was giving. The Pelotz has geschleppt over Tishrei Cheshvan, and at that time I was also working on Mafteches from the Rebbe Hashab's Memorim. And I wrote into the Rebbe a Pesach Dover, and the Rebbe should fill in the date, because whatever I needed to do when the Shashelos Hayachas was done, so the Rebbe writes in the date, and on the second page, side of the page, the Rebbe writes, "Habepil mamish da'ores v'agoes la'yem yem?" Question mark. Was tut sich wegen Hayom Yom? He finally sent it in Kislev time, and the Rebbe was magiat gor stark. I mean, we can possibly say that the Hayom Yom is one of the most authentic biographies of the Rebbe, in the sense that the Rebbe was magiat. Arabgenommen Sachen, zugelegt Sachen, mechane Sachen. Just interesting to note how much the Rebbe had a shita over the many years. For example, in Tafshin Chav Zayin, there was a yishuv in Shichon Chabad in Lod. The Rebbe did not want it to be under his name. So B'meila, and they told me from Yisroel, try, maybe you can mention it in the Rebbe's Tilbis. Lepil Mamish, we sent it in, the Rebbe crossed it out. Interessant. And when we look today at Hatmimim from Rabbi involved, the Rebbe was involved, you know, get every prat. But for whatever reason, the Rebbe did not want it under his name. It came Yud Aleph Kislev, Tovshim Mem Beis. The Rebbe sends out his biography, the Shalshelis Hayachas, wrote a lot of Agoas, especially when he did the Sefer Kloli, the Nuschois, V'chulos, now Wilt mit Haoris. And then the Rebbe took a onion skin paper. I don't know today if the Elam knows what onion skin is. Onion skin is basically like a carbon copy that they use, like thin paper, transparent paper. And the Rebbe started to continue writing his biography. And the Rebbe wrote, they were up to Yud Aleph Kislev. The Rebbe says, Me'erer b'negei afatas hamayonis chutza, Yutas Kislev. Me'erer b'negei miftzah Chanukah. And then the Rebbe speaks about the Sefer Kloli. And the Rebbe twist the Sefer Kloli, according to some opinions, it is the end of the Seikola Teira Kula, according to some days. And Mamela the Rebbe says, Puk Chazim Adam Debar, see what the Elam says, that the Welt sagt, as Tovshim Membeis is Hoyet Hey Shnaz Bias Mashiach. Versteht so, the Rebbe writes such an Inyan. It's the first time the Rebbe should himself write an Inyan like on a case. Die gewonnen versteht sich Rosh Ha'oretz, ich bin eine meredike Isherus. But the Rebbe wanted that certain Yonim should be looked up. And we saw that somebody in Yonim, the Maramokim that the Rebbe referred to, is Chatnish Punkt, what the Rebbe was saying. So the Rebbe said, when he get the Chassam Sefer, there was a Haolami in the Oris of Hatmimim, or it's in Biyurim, that the Chassam Sefer wrote on Tovkuf Ayin a cage. So the Rebbe, when he came back from the Rebbe says Lahashmit, and then the Rebbe writes further the next day, Sinish Konstire, Val Yederer, was gelebt, Matkufa von a cage, hat geschrieben dem cage von seiner Zeit. Bei Meile, bei Chassam Sefer was Tovkuf Ayin.
Rabbi Seligson, can you translate that?
In other words, it doesn't contradict to what it says that it's Tovshin Membeis, although the Chassam Sefer is Tovkuf Ayin, because everyone from the daily Yisroel would refer to a case that is closer to their time. So by Meila, the Chassam Sefer wrote Tovkuf Ayin, but it's Tovshin Membeis. So this was basically the Tovshin Membeis. And from Damostan, the Rebbe started to name every year, connected it to a case. The Rebbe connected it with the Tovshim Mem Gimel, Tiyeshnas Gili Mashiach, Nachedot Tiyeshnas Divri Mashiach, Melech HaMashiach. There's 1 year that the Rebbe skipped, but otherwise every year the Rebbe announced the Fabringen before Rosh Hashanah or Besmichos. Mit gesehen as Anayer Gili, Stutzach Damos, and every year the Rebbe was announcing, declaring what the year is.
Rabbi Seligson, do you know a story with the Rebbe Shlich Morocco, Rabbi Leibor Raskin, about suggesting that the Rosh Hashanah and Tovshim Membeis?
Not familiar. I know that he wrote in about Tinosi also, and the Rebbe told him that the spelling, the Seder Eisi should be different. I think he wrote Tisna. So the Rebbe says that line Tinosi. But we did hear then that Rabbi Zusha Vilmovsky, all about Sholom, Machin Gitumot, that Tovshim Membeis is Tiyeshnas Bias Mashiach. When he was here Tishrei. And then the Rebbe, in Yud Aleph Kislev, that's when the Rebbe released it. And there was like a whole new opening. Und wir verstanden damals, das Chassidim, that this is the Shmeinim Shana, und es wird gebracht 18 Chassam Sefer. A Punkt wie der Geil Rischen, ich gewinne 80 Jahre, und dann ist der Geil Achari. Also sie haben damals Chassidim gerät und gehofft, dass sie gewinne Kislev a few months before Yud Aleph Nissen. It was a regular year then.
If I'm not mistaken, the concept of having a Rosh Hashanah for a year started this year in Tovshin Membeis, and by Rabbi Leibor Raskin, who was preparing then the Luach Hashanah for the Moroccan community. And if either he was matzia it or the Rebbe told him, I'm not sure which say there was, but it certainly started from then. Thank you very much, Rabbi Seligson. Levi Katz, can you please screen share the Rebbe's Hagais on Rabbi Seligson's Erech Membeis? Beautiful, very nice. Rabbi Zalik says, anything you can share or maybe read this Ksav so any of them could read to understand?
Basically, what we're seeing here is Tovshim and Beis, we'll start from there. Yetzer B'Kriya, the Rebbe erased the word Kadesha. He erased it. Okay, we're going too fast over here. Okay, the Kriya Kadesha is called Mestoria Sakto B'Achtis Amitis and it's Nitzkis.
It's hard to hear you, you're a little choppy.
Okay, I am on the same.
Okay, try again.
Okay. Tovshim and Beis, Yetzer B'Kriya Kadesha. The Rebbe erases the word Kadesha. Shekol B'nei Yisroel Anoshim V'Noshim should unite B'Achtis Amitis V'Nitzkis Aydei Knias Eisei B'Sevetei Klolis Shetikosev L'Schusam Kol Echad V'Echad B'Minhogei Tzures Oasis Ashkenaz Sfard Teiman Arizal V'Chol. The Nochid Rebbe Mamshich Sefer Torah Avur Talmidei V'Temchei Yeshivas Temchei Hatmimim Ubnei Beisam. And Bnei Beisam is the dust made a lahaskel taken from a yad b'ksivas abes varian. B'Sefer Torah for Beis Rivka ksivas avur Talmidis v'tem k'bat Sefer Beis Rivka Bnei Beisam. And the Rebbe writes, made a lahaskel taken from yad b'ksivas. He writes, so this is basically the two meisters, and where the Rebbe started to speak about it also in the winter time. Now, the second page, what we see is what I mentioned about the onion skin paper. It was like a thin page, and that's why it's not so clear, because the Rebbe wrote it with a pencil on a thin carbon paper.
Rabbi Seligson, I'm sorry. Do you have Rabbi Seligson? Do you have another computer playing in the background?
No,
because there's an echo for some reason coming from your screen. It's a little difficult to hear.
let me check. Okay, it seems like the desktop is up on also. So I should just leave the meeting on the desktop.
I'm sorry?
Okay, so I'm leaving the meeting on the desktop, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You hear better? You hear better? Okay,
That's better, yeah.
Post.
Can you just read this square, this order that Rebbe wrote to you and just translate it so we understand what the mitzvah is all about?
Okay, so basically the Rebbe is writing that this is a mitzvah for the initially Hatmimim and Beis Rivka and Bnei Beisam. And then the Rebbe continues, Hafotzes Hamayonas Chutza, as the Rebbe is approaching Yutas Kislev. Then the Rebbe writes about Mitzvah Chanukah. And then the Rebbe says that this is the last of the mitzvahs according to many days. And Puk Chazim Adam Bar, was it the Loshen that that this is basically Tovshim and Beis. So this was this half a sheet, or whatever it was, I don't remember exactly size, but basically the sheet that the Rebbe sent out, and this was to go into the biography.
Well,
so that's how the
So the Rebbe wanted Yeshivas Teim Hatmimim and the Inhalos of Beis Rivka to oversee the first Sefer Torah, so then everyone should follow. What exactly was the Hayro?
Right. They're all the Talmidim with the Bnei Beisam should be buying a nos in the Sefer Torah. So it was basically these two. It happened to be that Beis Rivka, the Rebbe was Magia Maimel, covered the Sima Beis Rivka, Sefer Torah, Tavshin Yud. I mean, Tavshin Lamed, the Sima Sefer Torah Shal Mashiach.
Well, thank you for sharing that. If I can just add the difference between the Sefer Torah for the Yaldi Yisroel versus the Sefer Torah Haklali for those over bar mitzvah is the Rebbe was very makbid that every child should give for the Yaldi Yisroel should give no more than $1. However, in regards to the Sefer Torah for adults, I don't think there was any restriction of any amounts, and anyone could feel free to give how much they desire for their ice.
Yeah. Also interesting to note that the Siyum Sefer Torah Kloli, I think maybe Rabbi Kesseler mentioned it, is started the Ksiva Sefer Torah Kloli began on Erev Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe says before the Siyum Hashanah. The Noach given Noach in Yapela Dikazach. In Tovshem Membeis, they finished the Siyum Sefer Torah. They made the Siyum Sefer Torah HaKloli. I think it was in the hotel in Manhattan. The Rebbe damals gerät Asicha that the Rebbe Rashab in Ayin Zayin, there was a Maimer in Saticha Likim, and with this Maimer at the Mevakel given the Malchus, the letzter from the Nitzigim from the Malchus from Sholom in Rusland. So the Rebbe too is geführt. I think us behind. Now you look at it, you won't even see these words. The Rebbe says, "Misol Potter werden in dem Schuss von Sefer Torah Kloli, Potter werden von dem Goy und Goyishkeit." You look at it today. It says, "Soll Chenwicken zum Guten Punkt wie damals." 2 days later, it was in the news that Soslov, who was a whole ideologist in Russia with many administrations, they got Ashita, he's a Pashat Gepegert. And Monday, he was in the news. Und das ist gewesen ein Wort an Shabbos war Ihrem Membeis.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing that. Next speaker, we have with us one of the Rebbe Shluchim in Alaska, in Anchorage, Alaska, Rabbi Yosef Greenberg, who was zeicha then to come to the Rebbe and actually the year before he came, and since then, Baruch Hashem, he never left. He was zeicha to see many, many beautiful episodes and to be involved with many activities throughout the years. And it's our schos to ask Rabbi Greenberg to speak some of his zichrenis from that year when he, if I'm not mistaken, he was a Bachar Alotera then, to hear from his perspective what on the ongoings of some assembly and the ongoings by the Rebbe. Rabbi Greenberg L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Still a hemshich of Simchas Torah until Shabbos Bereishis. So
it's a schus for me, and thank you for all the speakers before. But I'd love to hear from Rabbi Kesseler and Rabbi Seligson and Rabbi Duchman, Yashakir for everyone. Just to share, I was a young bacher. They were mamish ältere bachem and or Jungelite already. I was a young bacher. I just came from Israel the second time. I was the first time at the Rebbe Lamed Vov. So first, I want to give just a general review of Tishrei of Tishrei Membeis, the Yim Membeis, and then I'll just a few details, and we'll make it short and sweet. So Michlal, the Yom Tov Shem Beis was a very rich year, very reich year. I mean, many issues that later became Avni Yesed Chassidus Chabad in the last 30 years or 40 years. Last 40 years started in Membeis. The Moshel Dugme, beside the Mitzvah Sefer Torah, of course, beside the Mitzvah Torah, but the Moshel Dugme, the Menera, the Lubavitch Menera, the Rebbe spoke about the Kanim should be like the Rambam and should not be Agulis, should be Balachsen that started in Membeis. The Luchas should not be Agulis and should be by Meruba. It was in Membeis. There were many issues the Rebbe spoke in Membeis and many Reichim Yonim. Even Shemitz the Noach was a medical student in Membeis. Well, first I want to give a general feeling what happened in Membeis. So because I was later in San Semti for many years, so I want to explain you that Membeis, I mean, Rabbi Kesseler, Rabbi Duchman, to them it's normal. But Membeis was still the year that was more like the Lamets before the huge Olam started to show up and things changed in 70. So Membeis, I was a Bochen Alter, and I remember Tishrei and later the entire winter. For even one example, the Rebbe used to go Shabbos home. Every Friday night, the Rebbe used to go home. Membeis was the last winter that the Rebbe went home. Maybe Mem Gimel a little bit, but then after that, after Pesach Membeis, the Rebbe stayed in the library, and it started to be Yom Tov in the library, and then little by little Shabbos in the library, and so on. So I remember Shabbos, the Rebbe used to, Friday night, everyone knows the Rebbe used to go down to Shul for davening, and then the Rebbe, right Mamzman, but the Bochem, all, hard to believe today, such a thing, that the Bochem was sitting upstairs in Zal, learning the Seder Sichos, Nobody went downstairs. And the Rebbe himself used to be in his room till after the Ma'ariv from the Bochum. Only after the Ma'ariv from the Bochum, the Rebbe used to go home. And we used to, Rafinha didn't allow us to go to 770 because we had our own Seder in Zalma Alter. But we used to run to eat something and run right away to 770 to wait for the Rebbe to come. And when the Rebbe is to come out, so we saw the Rebbe going on the Eastern Parkway. And then as young Bochum, we would run back on President Street from the other side, back on Kingston, and run on President. There was there is still today the mailbox there. We were hide behind the mailbox just to see the Rebbe. And it was amazing to see how on Eastern Parkway the Rebbe used to go very, very fast. And as soon as he turned around to Brooklyn, the Rebbe had to go Gelassen, Benachas. It was a pleasure to see the Rebbe, the way he walked to the Belachas until he went up the steps to the house. Just at the Duchman, it was freezing cold. It was every Friday night in the middle of the winter. But we ran to see the Rebbe. It was just and we had personal encounters with the Rebbe all the time because in 70 was so small. For example, that summer, the summer of Membeis, we were a group of Israeli Bach and we came to Holotea, and we came really to be in 70. We came to see the Rebbe. So after the Beis Tammuz, the custom was the yeshiva is to go to Siberia to camp to the vacation, and we went after the Beis Tammuz. I remember Rabbi Chodaka used to come out and watch the buses of the camps, and we went to. I think the Rebbe used to come out the earliest. So there was a Verbringen, it was Vav Tammuz, and we went to Verbringen by hookup. So we, the Israeli Bochum, we said to each other, we didn't come to New York to hear about hookup. We could have done it in Israel. So we decided we all jumped in a truck. There was our electrician who came from Crown Heights to fix something in camp. We jumped in a truck and we went back to New York, and we came to Frank Pekarski. We said, we want to be counselors in Altea. They need counselors. We are not going to away from the Rebbe. And he agreed, and we stayed in New York for those 3 months of the summer. And I remember I was all night in San Assembly. The Rebbe used to go, everyone remembers the guys who were there remember, the Rebbe used to go home at 12 o'clock at night, every night in the summer. Ma'ariv used to be 9:45, I think 9:45 was Ma'ariv, and then the Rebbe used to be in his room, 12 o'clock. You have to understand, the Tishrei base, 12 o'clock at night, there were maybe 10 Bochum in the old building, maybe 10 Bochum. I used to sit there, mamish by the door, the same the table across from the Rebbe's door, and I would come out, and I would just looking at Sikhe, a bit mine and Sikhe, waiting for the Rebbe to come out. They would come out, I would close the Sikhe and jump to see the Rebbe. And I remember there were several times they was looking at me like, that's what you do in honor of me, you close the book. But it was such a personal, there was nobody around. It was like you felt that individual encounter with the Rebbe would look on you through and through every time. I remember, for example, something that happened that summer that I never saw in the Yumanim. Everyone knows about one of the Chassidic Binke Altas, whatever. But so I remember there was a one night in the summer, and I see he's waiting for the Rebbe. So I knew something will happen here. The Rebbe came out, and mamish there were like maybe one other person beside me and Binke and the Rebbe. So I stand behind Binke, I was hiding behind him, and he stops the Rebbe, and he tells the Rebbe that Shmuel Betzal Alter is in Australia, is very, very sick, and the doctor said they have nothing, they can't help him. They don't know anything what to do. I still remember how the Rebbe did with his shoulder, like this, with the Achseln. I would say, Bazei, ich sage nicht, was zu tun, soll vorne heim lernen Teire. That was the Rebbe's words. And the Rebbe walked away. And he was standing there thinking, like, puzzled what that means. The Poel, he recovered, and he lived to Toshim Hey. So I'm just saying it was something, I think that I mamish stood next to the Rebbe, had the Rebbe said it with the hand, but I just saying that was the Elam was small, and the Fabringes, especially there were several Putzmikes Fabringes, and there was such a small Elam, mamish you felt that, and just to talk about, for example, Sukkot. I remember the Sichas of Sukkot, Haolami Sukkot. The Rebbe, one of the Sichas, if you remember, the Rebbe said that the Pshat is not the Rebbe's demanding Mizolvainu for ganze Nacht, not schlafen by Tag. It will be dancing all night, then to sleep by day. But he means not to sleep by night and not to sleep by day. And I remember, mamish, how by 4 in the morning, we used to get into the shul, the shul on the, what was the name of the shul? The shul on Montgomery, the Montgomery shul, the shtibel there in Montgomery. We used to go into the shtibel there. What?
You said Chaver Shas?
Yeah, the corner, the mikveh shul. I forgot what the mikveh was. And we used to sit in the shul, and we slept there on the tables like that for an hour and a half, from 4 to 5:30, and then at 6 o'clock we ran already. We went to mikveh. We ran already to some cemetery to wait for the line for the lulav. The mamish didn't sleep the whole sukkah, kipshutek. I remember the sicher every night. The Rebbe said the sicher. The Rebbe, especially when there was no mic, the Rebbe used to kind of a little bit scream that everyone should hear. And the Noach, the Rebbe left. I still remember some of the expressions of the Rebbe from those sichers. And the Rebbe left. The Rebbe used to stand there for an hour and a half, balabatim and ochim and bochem. The Chaz of the Rebbe was groups and groups. Chaz of the Rebbe sicher. It was such a chayv that I don't even remember it later in such a way. So Talmidei Beis was a very rich year. Now, just for a few more details. First of all, I also remember that summer how Yisroel came with his children that summer from Eilat, and a few weeks later, Yosef came with his children from Eilat. And it was very unique how by Ma'ariv, the kids would stand by the Rebbe's table. They were mamish little kids. His oldest kid was there. And after Ma'ariv, by Kaddish, the Rebbe was saying with them, Omen Eish Merabo, like a father with children. And the Rebbe used to go, Yisroel would wait with the kids till midnight. The Rebbe used to go, I remember one time, the Bochim was singing some song, and the Rebbe gave me the hand, and then the Rebbe saw the kids. So the Rebbe took out one foot from the car, and he made it with his hand to the little kids that were up there at midnight. And then Yosef came with his kids, and the Rebbe did for Yosef's children the same thing. He made Mishmerabah with the kids and everything. It was just you saw the chibur from the Rebbe to the children of Shluchim in such an unusual way. But then I just want to point out one thing about the Mitzvah Sefer Torah that everyone spoke about. I remember the big shturim of Mitzvah Sefer Torah started Shabbos Lech Lecha. If you remember, Shabbos Lech Lecha, the Rebbe was saying, the Rebbe was screaming. He said, when I got the Rishime, I got the list, how many names what verschrieben to the Sefer Torah is me geworden lichtig in the Egen beloschen sage daher. It became light in my eyes, beloschen sage daher, which means it became black in my eyes. That's all the number. And the Rebbe started saying as the Rinne von Sefer Torah is not a simple thing. It's Poshe the Welt Schockenzach and Prinzelzach, and it's a pikuach nefesh for every Jew. So after speaking the whole Tishrei, that's the numbers everyone provides. And I remember that Shabbos Lech Lecha changed the game. And I remember that Motzi Shabbos, there was a bus, the entire yeshiva, we went to Monsey, it was cold. And we went to Monsey from door to door. And I don't remember anyone. It was not Lubavitchers at all. I don't remember anybody who said no to this. It was everyone was walking with us mamish with a smile, and people did it with chibur. And the shturim from Mitzvah Sefer Torah. I remember once I was on Mishtoim. It has to be Erev Shabbos Lech Lecha or Erev Shabbos Neach. I was in Manhattan, and the Breslau the Chazit came over to me, and he said to me, "We heard the Rebbe's the Mifta. We're going to write a Sefer Torah." That's what he said to me from Breslau. So I went to Maskirut. I came back from Mishtoim, and Leibel and Miriam were there. I told them that what happened, and they both wanted to know all the details, what exactly he said. I said, I don't know who that Breslau there is, and if you can rely on him, but that's what he told me, that they're going to write a Sefer Torah. But the Rebbe kept saying constantly that the Sefer should be in every nusach. It doesn't have to be Chabad. It should be in all the Sroid, whatever it is. So I remember that shturim. Another important shturim that happened that year, that had something just personal. Erev Rosh Hashanah, I mamish came of slichas. Erev Rosh Hashanah, I came to Erev Rosh Hashanah slichas was 7 a.m, and then after slichas there was a break. There was Seder Chassidus, there was a break. Now I remember I went to 1414. My brother Yisroel had his apartment there, his room there. I was staying with him, and I went to take my tefillin. I didn't know yet that say this dorm is 770. So I go before davening. I go back to 770, and I go mamish there. And this time I was a young bacher from Lud. And the first day I'm Rebbe. I'm thinking Tanya, it's Erev Rosh Hashanah. I think Tanya, I'm walking the street, and And then I'm standing at the corner of Mr. Parkway in Kingston, and I feel somebody's looking at me. So I turn around and I see the Rebbe is like staring at me. That's what I'm looking like through and through. And I jumped up, and then the Rebbe kind of took his eyes away. But he continued, even when I came back, he continued looking at me. You felt that personal relationship with the Rebbe in such an unusual way throughout the year. One more thing was what Rabbi Seligson just mentioned about the Inif Mashiach. The Seligson that was about Mashiach in that year was unusual. It was mamish, I think, the Shturim of Mashiach. For example, what Rabbi Seligson, I remember Rabbi Seligson got the answer. I remember, I think it was a Yudalef in Beis Kesseler. And I remember in Olateira, we got this phone call that a zettel came out of the Rebbe, that the Rebbe wrote, Tovshim Beis Tishnas Bias Mashiach. We all ran to 770. We all ran. It was the middle of the day. We all ran to 770. It was like, what? The Rebbe wrote Tishnas Bias Mashiach. The Olam was going on Redder. You can imagine the sales it was. We were going nuts. And again, it was kids, it was cold. We ran from Olateira all the way to 770 to find out what's going on. What did the Rebbe say? And then later, those remember Purim and Beis. Purim and Beis was another step in that Shturim of Mashiach. And the Rebbe said, "Van Verbringen," that mamish close to the end of the Verbringen. The Rebbe said, "As Mashiach can is Galaver, of 770 Eastern Parkway and Shushan Purim Tovshim and Beis." The Elam was going nuts. And the Rebbe finished, the Elam started the Nigen, the famous Nigen. The first was the Nigen. We want Mashiach now. If I had him, that Nigen. And then the Elam changed it to we Mashiach now. And the Rebbe told him after with the hand that the Elam stood up. It was mamish dancing. It's mamish unbelievable. Then the Rebbe said that someone should make a kula, and someone should be Adel Yoda, should volunteer to be Adel Yoda. And the Shturim from Mashiach that started that Purim, I remember the whole night after the Verbringen, there was one of the Michoel to Chabad from Satmar, Boruch. He ran to Chaim Boruch right away to buy the tape, and he had a little tape recorder, and he was playing the tape the whole night in 770 upstairs by the Verbringen. Those words that the Rebbe said, Mashiach is gone, 770. It was such a mishuganei seirus that it's hard to describe it.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Greenberg. We'd like to go back to you after the next two speakers. Please don't leave.
I'll finish with one word.
Okay.
Mashiach, there is a very difficult word, the Rebbe says, Pesach Membeis, and it's important for everyone to know. Because there is a whole thing about going on. You get Mashiach, that adapted with the Rambam, that Elimelech is David. There is a movement among some of the Maskilim in Chabad, or Balinigli in Chabad, the Rebbe says, that the Dafka liegt in Rambam, mit Elimelech, und wie stimmt das, mit Itzter, die ganze Weise. Tovshim and Beis, Babar Shabbat Verbringen, was a whole sicher. The Rebbe asked the question, wie can man sagen, as Tishrei B'Av, Nebel Mashiach Shel Yisroel? And therefore, the Geula could have happened on Tishrei B'Av. So the Rebbe asked the question, what says Nebel Mashiach Shel Yisroel? He was a baby. He was just born. How could he be Mashiach? And the Rebbe clearly answered, as Punkt in Bria Soil, when the Cain and Abel were born, they were born like 20 years old, and Chava, the mother, told him to cut the cord. So the same thing the Rebbe said, the Mashiach, so Mashiach could be a baby, was just born, and he's a Odom Sholom, which is Manig Yisroel, take nothing goes. So the ganze Linie of the Rebbe said, as Musdai from Rambam, se hitzach nicht on, aber Ferish is sicher for Rebbe Tovshim and Beis, when the old Shlom Mashiach started, as Mashiach could be a 1-minute baby, because the ganze Linie is Beifen Shel Zochus, Sel Mailem and Ateva, so the ganze Linie does not mugbal. The Rambam wrote, as Mashiach had come בדרך הטבע, כעוני ורכב החמי, בדרך הטבע, does the halacha as the minimum. Aber wie better sein, lepel mamish, the Rebbe schon gepasst, das ist einmal im Teva, the Rebbe said it also, von der Sicher von Chesiv und Tavshin und Aleph, as Nisi Dereinu, Mont und Firtuis, as the Besamir are aufgekommen in 770, which is definitely in Amerika im Teva, the ganze Rinien, as the Besamir is kommt in 770, and von dort flippen in Hertz. It's all the ganze Mashiach, with the Rebbe gepasken, is sicher in Amerika im Teva, so all the Shailas and Ram, Chal kein Nordlicht. Anyway, ich continue.
Shekech, Rabbi Greenberg, l'chaim.
Pleasure. L'chaim.
In the Sicha of Chamisha Asar of Tavshin Memches, the Rebbe speaks about the significance of a kviyas, Every single year is structured in a certain way. And the Rebbe quotes the Baal Shem Tov that from every single thing you can learn from Ayron and Beis Hashem, how much more so when it comes to Kviyas, there's every single day and every week, there's Hayro and how to serve the Eibusher better and how to make the Eibusher more a part of our lives during this that year's Kviyas. So as mentioned before, the Kviyas for Tafshin Mem Beis is the same as this year, Tafshin Pei Beis. Also happens to be Bahi Barbaim Shana, as mentioned earlier. So with that said, we'll move on to the Chelik of the Rebbe's Torah from Tafshin Mem Beis. We have with us here the Rebbe Shliach in Laguna Beach, California, Rabbi Melech Gurevitch, who was Zeicha as a young bacher from Eretz Yisroel to be involved in the Rebbe's Sichos, to be involved with the Vaad of Lahak, Vaad Chabri Lahak, and he's with us today to discuss and bring us back to those times. L'chaim Rebbe Melech.
L'chaim, 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 tza'alm and l'chaim. So I wish I should have been here from the beginning on and to hear everybody talking. The Tkufa is given was very powerful Tkufa on my personal level. Every bringen and we, I was a typist basically. So, but when the Rebbe read from Bocher Azetzer, when he speaks many times on Rashi, Bocher Azetzer sometimes makes a mistake. So some things went through that way also, but the idea was to learn the Sikha.
Rabbi Melech, can you first go back to the Areka of Lahak, which started just a few months earlier?
Yeah, okay. So we started Lahak actually Shabbos Pashas Gdeshim, which was right after Pesach Mem Aleph. And I was a Bocher in Chavavei Teire in Mem Aleph. And for years before, I already was involved in typing. It started basically after Lamed Ches, after Shmini Atzeres Lamed Ches, when some people started writing Yomanim, and I was then a Bocher in Teire. So they asked me also to fix the Hebrew and to type and whatever, so I started learning how to type. Within a short time, I also started helping in Anoches Hatmimim. They had a professional typist, but when we needed to do more, I was there a lot to help. By the way, just somebody sent me what happened with Yoske. With Yoske passed away, my brother passed away 6 months before Pesach. So he sent me a few videos that they used to be in shul together. Again, this has nothing to do with my base. This has to do, I don't know when, but so he sends me a few videos and reminded me that when I was I'm talking about when I was in Anoches Hatmimim, this is before Lahak, there was a bed over there that all the Bochim who were working in the Anoches, working day and night. So this one can take a break and take a little sleep for an hour in the bed, whatever. Anyway, Zushe, for those who don't know, Zushe used to come every Tishrei, used to work very, very hard to make sure Yisroel was involved, that the Ochim should learn Torah also, should not only be there, as guests, sondern sitzen and learn. And he comes to me upstairs and says, Melech and Zushe seinen Brüder, can you arrange for me that I should be able to sleep on that bed? So I told him, yeah, I'm a young Bocher, but I'll ask them. So I asked them in Bocher, he got Rishus, so Zushe and Brüder. So now I saw it in videos, my brother and Yoske, Zushe's son, used to, whatever, had discussions, they were davening a lot in that same shul. But since you're asking about the beginning, so the beginning was, again, right after Pesach, Mem Aleph, Shabbos Gdeshim, I was a Bocher, and David Feldman and Benny Wolf came to the where we ate the Bochim, and he tells me, he says, Melech, we need you now to help something. We're starting in Hebrew, and the first week in Hebrew was basically starting in order to get a bracha from the Rebbe. We need to have it all done. We did it all and finished it and sent it to Yisroel to print and bring it back to us before Shabbos, and we got a bracha from the Rebbe, and this is how Lag started. Shabbos Pashas Gdeshim Mem Aleph. It was a lot to build and all of that. I also, because mentioning typing, I was typing also about some of the Alter Rebbe's Kisvei Yad and Kisvei Yad of those already Alter Rebbe's Maimorim, some of the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim. But then my name is also, I'm also there in the Mafteches of the Alter Rebbe's what the Rebbe did in Memalef. So I'm there also. Anyway, but when it started Lahak, this is the point. It started Lahak, so it was basically day and night, every day. Yoske Greenberg just was talking about that Sukkis, we used to stay up a whole night. That is true. By me, it was, whenever I finished typing, I used to run dancing and then coming back to type. And, this was after Lechaims also. So this was plenty of that. But I want to say that, Poshet, it was Nochanan, it was a lot of work there. And Baruch Hashem, things went through, and some people came to me complaining, whatever. So I says, this is the famous line, the Rebbe uses it in the Sikha sometimes also, it's called Hertz, that there's room for everyone. So I said, the nights by me is a Hertz, and I have room for everyone, but a minute to type. And I did plenty. I did also some Igros Kedesh, for the mosquitoes. Look at the Sikha. Oh, you see the picture, yeah. Anyway, this was then, but I want to say if you go back to Membeis, we started, what's one of the interesting things in Membeis that we started is actually, this is when we started books.
Elimelech, is that you as a bacher typing in this picture?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
So just to give the crowd some illustration of what he's discussing, this is Rabbi Gurevitch typing in review.
And you see, label Alta and Dalton, this is another thing that I used to do a lot of the Rebbe's Agoyes. The Rebbe used to Magia twice, right? The first Agoy, that is when they write to the Rebbe. Then the second Agoy, before it goes for print by Motel Chain, this is me sitting here and typing on a typewriter, which was, for me, was already out of my normality because I started with the mechanical, on a typewriter, that means every line you got to take off your letters, whatever, so your hands, and then move another line. This is a disturbing thing. So I said, I'm not. So for Anoches, we started in the what's his name, and we got a machine for it. Whatever. This is all technical issues. But this was all in Membeis, basically starting Membeis. Another thing that we did is instead of sending to Yisroel to print, we found a place in Manhattan to print, and that helped us that, by Wednesday night, we had to send them packages, boxes, so people will get it there on Thursday, and then it will be spread all over before Shabbos. And it started sometime in Membeis, and then in Memgimel, we had already, we started printing, we had that part of ours, but it was basically growing, this organization, this Anoches Lahak, that started was in a way was a very powerful issue because the Rebbe speaks in Yiddish, and there's I think there was a letter somewhere in the early in the first few where Igros Kedesh, in one of the first Igros Kedesh, where the Rebbe writes that the Yiddish, weiß it in Yiddish, v'chulu, but the Teichen is the Teichen Limudi. So one of the things that was from Hertz, there was two things that they sent us from Hertz in order to start Lahak. One was that there was a new generation growing and they don't speak Yiddish as they do, but we have to be mechanic them. So this was one issue, yeah or no. The other issue was how to present, to push it to all the Lomdim with all Rabbanim v'chulu. They should see the Rebbe, what the Rebbe read and what the Rebbe is teaching. Because the Rebbe is, when it's in Yiddish, how many of them are reading it? And when it's, there's also the famous line about Yiddish, the Torah that was translated in Yiddish, I forgot the name of it. That was not so much for the big Talmidei Chachamim. But the point here is, again, to bring it, to make a fotzah, the whole issue was a fotzah samayonis. And make a fotzah samayonis on a practical level. In a practical level, so every time we had the Sikha, we used to right away send it with some bochum downstairs to 770. So, this was a ma'apecha that the Sikhas started, the Sikhas were already, completed before the next Shabbos. They had already to learn the Sikha.
Elimelech, I would like to ask you, for those of us who aren't familiar with the process of publishing the Rebbe's Torah, can you just give us a little overview of from when the Rebbe said the Sikha until it was published? What went on and how many sleepless nights did you have? And if you can go into the technical details, thanks.
If you want to, okay. So every Motzei Shabbos, Rabbi used to stand over there for the Chazara, and everybody was there. Everybody used to who remember, and those who take notes, v'chulu. And I was working with David Feldman. Those one for me is like a Chassidische Tate in a way. He was older than me, was educating me and all of that, and bringing me to all of this. And Simon was in Yiddish in the Hatmimim, and there was a few others who were also taking notes. Those who a lot of them had they remember the details, and Rebbe used to talk, and they would add Vogel. This was a very common thing. Always then back to Lahak. If I'm going to say, David used to stay day and night and write it. David knew that in a typical Hanacha, he has to finish it before by Tuesday in order for us to have it on Wednesday. And whatever he started, let's say Sunday, would give me Sunday ready to type whatever he finished there. Like the whole process. And by Wednesday, Wednesday afternoon, I had to run to the airport to Hulu. This is when there's one Verbringen, Shabbos. But there are so many times when there's more Verbringens. Okay, take for example, we're talking before about the Siches every night. The Siches. So this was the mamish, talking about extra time, extra work. This is not just the Chofcheshvan. So many times. I mean, yeah, it's true that in those days it was not so much spread like so often in Mem Beis, let's say, like in Mem Ches, Mem Tes, but still, it was there was a lot of Verbringens, a lot of that. It was a lot of work. I mean, I'm getting that point back. At one point, I think it was by the end of my Aleph or beginning of my base, we brought in Yisroel Shimon to be from our Mekemes. Before that, this was also on my head a little bit. And when it's books that we didn't have in our office, I used to run downstairs to 770 to the Cheder Sheni over there, in the back over there, where the Chosn and Kala are sitting, for after the Chasana, after the Chuppah. So I used to pick up books over there. So bottom line is, when everybody is over there standing in line for Minche or for Ma'ariv, whatever, and after on, I'm running. 2 times happened to me that Binyamin Klein had to stop me because the Rebbe gate. And unfortunately, I had to, whatever.
Gurevitch, was there any deadlines from when the Sikha was written down until it had to go into the Rebbe?
By saying headlines.
Deadlines.
Deadlines, I understand, but we're saying the deadlines mitzad the Rebbe, lav davke. Mitzad the Rebbe was later on, before we started, because we started with Agois, which was more in, I think, Vogel. But back to that time, it's basically, that itself was a revolution because most of the Anachas up to that point was almost never in a week. Okay? And here we did it in such a strong way that I'm saying is the Bochum in the right in 770, in those first years, they had that Tainug. The Tainug they had, that Boruch Hashem, the Rebbe had the Verbringen on Shabbos, and then on Wednesday or Thursday they get the Sikha, and they would spend, the Bochum would spend so much time just to learn the Sikha, just to get, to see it in writing, and and learn it from writing. This was a very big deal. We had constantly people came to us to thank us, and when they start sending to other shluchim, or lover, we started that. Now, but you want from me the physical, you want to have a word from the Rebbe, a sikha, one of the interesting things, since you're talking about, let me just say, I when you mentioned to me that you want me to talk, so I decided I'm going to open and take a look into sikhas again to remind me what, in those days. One of the interesting things is you can talk about Simchas Torah, about one of the interesting things is the Ato Bechartonu, what the Rebbe is asking. We say every day by davening, we say, so what is the Ato Bechartonu? On the other hand, we say to Rabbeinu Shalom Ato. To you, it's like face-to-face kind of. The Rebbe brings this point that is a much higher level than Bonu Bechartonu Michoel. Bonu Bechartonu Michoel is this is the tefillah that leads to Torah b'chulu. But Ato Bechartonu is a much higher level, and it has to do with the Mishmini Atzeres Lochem, then Simchas Torah b'chulu. It's a ganze Sira, but the point here is that the Rebbe is basically saying, hey, we are getting more and more And this is basically, to say a poor word, I want to say L'chaim before I talk this. L'chaim.
Chaim. Rabbi Gurevitch, do you recall the Rebbe walking in to show with the Sefer Lahak? His Vaad?
A few times, yeah. Also to the sukkah.
I'm sorry again?
Also to the sukkah, he used to take some of those books. Sometimes he would take the same book a year later also, the same, I don't remember if it was Membeis, Gimel, whatever, but they saw him, the same book again. But this is, I want to say again, the concept of Harbe Chalton is just one dogma of this, that we have to grow. People who called me, whoever called me about this, was about Tavshin Beis Station as Bias Mashiach. Tavshin 4 years later, Tavshin Pei basis, Plois, Vogel. And there is a basic question, if from a calculation perspective, it's a very basic question, how long, but the Rebbe takes everything, and everything that is, in this, the basic point is there, the vorabgehen in Elam Haze, tiefer und tiefer mit der Keches von Terem, der Keches mit der Dorches von Chassidus, what's a man and with that we are not only Simcha, it's an effect, and it's bringing closer the Dir B'Tachteinim, bringing Mashiach, mit alle Inyanim. So Tavshim and Beis actually started with this point, Teishnas Bias Mashiach, in public, in that statement. And this is a very powerful issue. And yet, this year, the Seder Hashanah is the same. There's so much to learn from it. So I want to say, there's plenty more to talk about. Yudal of Nissen, I got to say something on a personal level because, a few months ago, my kids, in the middle of the Corona business, they suddenly surprised me. Why? Because they decided that they heard that their father is getting, another zero. Yoske, your brother Yisroel is probably on the same level with me here because we were Chavrusas there. 60, okay? And there's an interesting thing when people are asking 60. If you live 120, you're growing up to 60. And then, so the Rebbe in Chav Beis, in Yudal of Nissen, read from the Indian that they are growing. Then in Yudal of Nissen, Membeis, we had the Tanya, but why anything is given the Nakuda that you are growing and growing because if you're focused on the Chassidische Inyanim, you are growing. You're not. Maybe the body is a little harder here. So it started the Weltische Elam. You get a certain age, they stop working. By the way, this was also in Lamed Beis, the Rebbe, they said this point in the Sikha, by Yudal Nissen, that, some people think at a certain age, they come to 70, so, but the point is, this is a starke Sikha that, we got to grow and grow, and all as man, the whole time, we got to grow and grow. So this is a very big deal. I want to say, there's Geleiter, there's Bochum, whatever. We are all having, I want to say on Shlichus and Boruch more than 30 years on Shlichus already. And one thing that is always sitting in my head whenever I have a question or some lachatz is a very simple thing. Was will the Rebbe? The moment that goes into your mind, you have, and Baruch Hashem, is mamshich mer, so this is a very big deal. That's a big deal. By the way, one of the sikhs that went Varmalchus this weekend here is a very interesting thing. The Rebbe said in Simchas Torah. This is a sikha from Tavshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe sagt, take a picture, look in the picture of the Rebbe, and zog l'chaim. Now, the Rebbe had to afraid the Rebbe, of course, but the point is, when you say l'chaim, you should just know you get all the keach, so l'chaim to all of us, we should all have keach, we should all have, literally, push it in the most practical level. The Rebbe is a nachas, and our as shluchim, we have a tafkid to make sure that the Rebbe is a nachas. So l'chaim. Chaim,
Yishkech Remelach. As mentioned, We'll get back to you soon. Thank you so much. As mentioned a few times earlier, Tavshin Membeis, Erev Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe spoke about the Mitzvah Eis Sefer Torah, that every single Yid should have a Eis in the Sefer Torah of his own, and not only for the Yaldi Yisroel. One of the Bachrim who were one of the panelists now, who was a Bachir then, had a stark connection to this Mitzvah Sefer Torah, and he was a big doer in this Indian, as you will soon hear from him. Actually, in a conversation inviting him to this panel, he mentioned to me that 40 years has passed, and perhaps now is the time that the Bachrim, Talmidei Yeshivas should get together and have a Sefer Torah for their own and encourage the Yeshivas and communities. So Yashikech Rabbi Aaron Slanim for the Yisroel, and Mr. Shem, the Vaad Hatmimim, will be discussing, Mr. Shem, a future plan to write a Sefer Torah for the entire all Talmidei Yeshivas. It's still in talks. We'll have to figure out the logistics. But give a Yashikech to Rabbi Slanim for bringing up the idea. And Mr. Shem, it should materialize. It should be Geir Nachas Virach as it was in Membeis and Gimel and Dalit when the Sefer Torah Klalim were coming out. So let it be again in Tafshin Pei Beis and Mr. Shem Pei Gimel. There should be a Sefer Torah completed for the Talmidei Yeshivas and L'chaim. Rabbi Aaron Slanim, please. The Rebbe Shlich and Binghamton.
Chaim. So I think, Benji, you asked me to speak about something else and this. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when we were Bachrim, particularly this actually happened in middle of Tafshim Mem Aleph. And as we know, there were many Verbringens Shabbos that the Rebbe had gekocht, and he says, "I roye b'maise b'poel, m'zalzem mefarsim zayin." So we were sitting a group of Bachim and thinking, what is the best way to be able to at least give over a roes b'poel mamish from this Shabbos Verbringen to at least to shluchim, to be able to bring it everything b'maise b'poel. So I was Eicha myself, and it was then also Loza Reichik, that we decided that we're going to start a special shluchim service that every Mitzvah Shabbos will call the shluchim and give them over nekudis of Eiroes b'maise b'poel from this Shabbos Verbringen. And you have to visualize Tafshim Mem Aleph. There was no fax, and there was, just even a long distance call was not a cheap thing in those days. But we felt if you read the Sichas and you see the koch, how the Rebbe wanted the inyonim on the Chabtam B'Poel, and we know that the Shluchim, this is one of the most important thing that Shluchim wanted to know what is Neger B'Poel. So we sent out a notice to at least to the Shluchim in Artsi Sabris and Canada, to the Ed Shluchim, that we want to start a Shluchim service that we're going to give over after Shabbos by phone on the Kudah for 2-3 minutes. And in those days, we started with Ed Shluchim with the idea that every Ed Shliach, whoever works under them in the different Shtetlach, that they will give over the Eiroes B'Poel. And Tafshim Mem Aleph, there was a very, compared to today, was literally a very, very limited amount of shluchim that we were able, between me and Loza Reichik, were able to cover all the shluchim in about an hour and a half to call. We had 2 phones in 14, 18 in my dorm room, and every Motzei Shabbos we went and called the shluchim. But we know that everything in this kind of a way is important to be connected to an official message from the Rebbe. So we felt that we have to do it through Tzacham Rekozis. So we went to Reb David Raskin, Olav Sholom. We told him about the idea, and in the beginning he was not sure about it, but then he agreed that yes, it's the right thing. And then all of the duchim of everything what we did we sent into the Rebbe to Reb David Raskin, and Baruch Hashem, we were zeicha to come overcome entfers of Niskabel with Yoschein, including there were 2 times in those 2.5, 3 years that we were doing it, that the Rebbe gave mashke by the Shabbos Fabrengen for whoever is going to do a Emshech Fabrengen, the Mekaimei will be able to get from this mashke. So we took from the mashke from the Rebbe. It says we didn't get from the Rebbe, but the mashke that the Rebbe gave to Reb David Raskin, we took the mashke and we sent it out to all of the shluchim who were in our shluchim service special, and they got the mashke within a day and a half, 2 days. And it was a moedik shturim that everyone was able to have. And again, I'm saying in those days, it was not an easy thing. And of course, years later, there was Fax Asicha, there was Chazorah Motzi Shabbos, that Rabbi Yoel gave Chazorah, some other Chazrim gave Chazorah through WLCC. But for the period from mid of Tavshim Mem Aleph till the end of Tavshim Mem Gimel, this is something that we did every time when there was a Fabrengen, and this was something that really made a big shturim from shluchim, because we got the feedback that this was something that they never had before, because as we all know, of course, shluchim will have relatives in Kron nights, will call up after Shabbos what was, but to get a synopsis of a Rosh and Maise Bepoel was the Rebbe Shturim to Vil and Mizel Gleich Upton. This was something that it was very uplifting to the Shlichus. This is regarding Memalef Membeis. Membeis, we're zeicha here to hear in the panel from many people expressing about the year of Tavshim Membeis, and going back to the Ini from Sefer Torah, just to give a few corrections of what was said before, that Rosh Hashanah, when the Rebbe was the first time the Rebbe spoke about it was Erev Rosh Hashanah, Bekitzer, and he asked, but then Rosh Hashanah by the Fabrengen, towards the end of the Fabrengen, the Rebbe started talking more in details. And by the Fabrengen Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe only mentioned some Hatmimim, bebald as der Ingen, was im Rede wegen Achtes von Teire, das sich annehmen von Bnei Teire. Und Bnei Teire seien doch die Talmidei Yeshivas von Shivas Tam Hatmimim. So therefore, they should be the ones who should start this Sefer Teire for Achdus, soll sich annehmen Dafke von Shivas Tam Hatmimim. Beis Rivke was added later. If you read or heard the Siches, Yud Gimel Tishrei was a sturmdike Siche to go in more in details, and the Rebbe was masbir, das nicht der Inyan of machen Geld, back and forth, like mentioned before, that there was no agbola of $1, but the Rebbe also did not want from the Ktseah Sheni that this should become a money maker thing, but he was like talking to the Meisdes, to Tom Hatmimim, why is it nicht angehabt of dem Inyan, das Eichet was can bringen Geld. Anyways, I was involved at least for the first half a year, the first Sefer Torah b'miyuchet, helping out, counting. Every Friday, the Rebbe wanted to have a detailed duch, how many people sich verschrieben in the Sefer Torah. So we had to collect from all the Bachim who went to Miftzayim and anyone else, when the Geleiter were involved, we collected, because Tom Hatmimim was the place for the Sefer Torah Hatmimim that everyone had to give the Zettlach on the Geld. So we used to count Friday afternoon, literally like a few hours before Shabbos, to count everything, how many people registered, and as mentioned before, then in one of the Fabrengens, Lech Lecha, and the Chag Shabbos Lech Lecha Membeis, the Rebbe said, even though this was, I'm sure everybody knows that Tavshim Membeis, and even Memalef Shnas Akel, there wasn't a Fabrengen every Shabbos. Memalef, there was almost every Shabbos, but Membeis not every Shabbos. So Lech Lecha, Tavshim Membeis was already after Zayin Cheshvan, and the Rebbe said that one of the reasons of the Fabrengen from Shabbos Lech Lecha Membeis was to be me'erer about the Sefer Torah Kloli, and he gave a chelik then, how many people were
Rabbi Slonim, we lost you. Rabbi Slonim, do you hear me? Okay, I guess we'll go back to Rabbi Slonim when he gets back on. Rabbi Vogel, can you unmute yourself? Or Levi, can you please unmute Rabbi Vogel? Levi Katz, if you can please unmute Rabbi Vogel. Fortunately, the
Okay.
yeah. So just going back to before about when the Rebbe started, when the Chavid Lahak started the Maisid, you recall the Rebbe coming into 770 with holding a sefer?
It was Erev in Kippur, Toshim and Gimel, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere around there, maybe it's Mandalat. I'm really not sure. But I remember what the excitement. I used to hang around, or Melech probably remembers, I used to hang around Lahak a lot and help them in my little ways. And the excitement when the Rebbe came in to the shul holding another sefer underneath his siddur, and what sefer is it? And I had to realize it was a Hanachas Lahak, a bound sefer. It was the Yakros, the Rebbe showing in public his appreciation that the sefer, not the sichas, was not just printed every single week; it was actually bound and available for everybody to buy a complete sefer. Because the Rebbe mentioned many times the dafka dover shebitfus is ladeiros, and the tfus seemed to mean not just kontresim, but actually a sefer, which is mamish ladeiros. That's
Thank you very much for sharing that. Rabbi Slonim, it's good to have you back. Levi, if you can please unmute Rabbi Slonim. All right, L'chaim, please continue where you left off.
L'chaim, I don't know where you heard me left off. Anyway, so throughout the, I don't know when I got disconnected, so I'm going to go back a little bit from before. The Shabbos Lech Lecha was a special verbringen in connection with the Sefer Torah for Achdus Bnei Yisroel. And the Rebbe gave a chelik then that how many people were, and then became a bigger shturim to be able to register more even in the Sefer Torah. And the truth is, at least for the first few months, there's almost no verbringen that the Rebbe did not speak about Sefer Torah of Achdus, either bariches or bekitzer. So we saw how it's negea benefesh ban Rebbe bakosha nafshis about the inyan of the Sefer Torah. I remember we also were involved. Rabbi Zirkind was the sefer for this Sefer Torah, and all of the Bochrim from 770 were divided to be magia at least 3 times the Amudim of the Sefer Torah. In other words, we understood that the Rebbe's cook in this Sefer Torah is that the Bochrim should be involved in them, not only in a ruchnisdike way, but in every detail of the Sefer Torah to be involved. And later on, when it was the time when it was the Siyum of Sefer Torah, and the Rebbe and there was decided to do the Sefer Torah, the Siyum, there was even a question by the Vaad, Rabbi David Raskin, the Vaad from the Yeshivas, who asked the Rebbe if the Rebbe would be Messiah the Sefer Torah, the Gashmis, to be Messiah the Sefer Torah. And I don't remember exactly the Lashon, but the Rebbe something says Yoresi in another word, and he did not want to be in this union. Another nekuda that I think, I don't know if it's important to mention tonight, is that the Rebbe was a mishtatev in every Sefer Torah of Achdus. In other words, anyone who wrote a Sefer Torah of Achdus Yisroel, we know that there were later on not only Hatmimim and Besrifke, there were other. So in every Sefer Torah that was Achdus Yisroel, the Rebbe was personally mishtatev for himself and for the Rebbetzin and gave money for it to be a chelik from the Sefer Torah of Achdus. So going back of what Benji mentioned before, I think as Avi the Bachim gehen sich kochen in Shnas Tovshim and Beis, that is the same kvius and it's Arboim Shono, that leider Eze Sibbe Shetiya is der Indian of the Mifza Sefer Torah geworden sehr vernachlässigt. There are other Mifza Sefer Torahs, Lischus, Atzole, Lischus, all kinds that are wonderful, great things, but it's not the Mifza with the Rebbe Gemont of Achdus Yisroel, Pshute Achdus Yisroel. So we'll give a gleiche Sach that all of the Bochim from all yeshivas on sich unternehmen as this coming year should be a big sturm in them Indian, and today for if all the Bochim will sturmen in the Mifza Sefer Torah to finish up 304,000 letters is not Leiba Shomayim, and it's Korev Adova b'meid, and this will for sure bring Nachas Ruach zum Rebbe, and then definitely it would bring all the brachas that the Rebbe said, what the Sefer Torah, the Klolim, the Achdus Yisroel will bring to Am Yisrael, that we should take it from the Yad, Zachzel mit den Rebbe, Dola Mato, V'hu Yigolein.
Chaim b'chaim, Shekayach Rabbi Slonim.
Just a smaller order, Rabbi Greenberg mentioned before about two in Yonim that the Rebbe actually spoke about Tovshim Mem Aleph, not Mem Beis, about the Meneres and about the Luches was Kesiso Mem Aleph, and it wasn't Mem Beis, but in Mem Beis hat man sich gekocht in der Minyan.
Rabbi Greenberg, since you were just mentioned, I'd like to ask you about the following scene. We know that upstairs until Tavshin Memches, the Rebbe would daven Mincha Ma'ariv upstairs. After the Yistalk was the Rebbe started davening downstairs with Chassidim. In regards to the bench that the Rebbe sat on, if I'm not mistaken, Tashim and Babes, they got a new bench, a new cushion, and there was some comment from the Rebbe about that. If you can please share.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to comment to Rabbi Slonim. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Rabbi Slonim. He just mentioned that he started the phone calls to make Chazor and Motzei Shabbos. So I must say that Mem Gimel Mem Daled, I was a shlichus in Seattle, and it used to be a debate among the Bochim, what's better to spend the money? To go every month to the Rebbe, or every Motzei Shabbos to spend the money on a telephone call of an hour and a half to New York to find out what happened Shabbos. And I wanted to know that in those days the telephone calls cost a lot of money, and I chose to know every Motzei Shabbos what the Rebbe spoke, and Rabbi Slonim was my mashpia, and I used to call him every Motzei Shabbos, and at least we were an hour and a half on the phone in mamish with chazore of the entire thing, mamish in an amazing way. So I must say a big thank you for him. Second thing about the Luchas and the thing, the Rebbe, maybe you're right, but there was long verbringings, especially by the Kanim and the Menera, that the Rebbe spoke in Mem Beis as well. So probably was a hemshech to what happened. Now we'll go back to your question. So negate to the bench, yes, it was. I remember when I came to 770, I couldn't believe it when I used to see how the Bochum used to see right after the Rebbe left Mincha. Bochum used to sit on the Rebbe's bench, and not only the Rebbe's bench, on the Rebbe's place, mamish. I was shocked, and I remember there was one Bochum, I want to mention his name, who was mehader to see. With the second the Rebbe left, he was already sitting there when the Elam was not standing by Mincha, so to speak. Before there was a extra verbringing, and I guess it started with the Aores. Someone wrote about it in the Aores. The Rebbe gave all verbringing, the Rebbe all sicher, and there was going on, and then Ben Shechem. The Rebbe explained that the Vaad it's not his Mokum Kavua, and the Mokum Kavua of the Rebbe was talking. Those who remember in those years in Mem Beis, there was several Shabbosim that Mincha was in the Rebbe's place where the Rebbe used to bring in the early years, which means right by the window between Cheder Rishon and Cheder Sheni, and actually it was a very, very special machzeh. Rabbi Slonim saw it more than me. I was able to see many Shabbos. It was a very special marriage to see how the Rebbe comes in to Mincha. And in the Zal, because the Rebbe used to walk the entire Zal to his place, so almost half of Zal had to be empty to be able to have enough space for the Rebbe's table and for the standard and for the Rebbe going to the Bimmen, coming back. It's a whole parade that was going on there. And I do remember 1 year later, Natman Bey started probably Mamish in the later years, and the Rebbe once or twice davened Shabbos Mincha. Was a surprise actually. Normally was every Shabbos again. And it happened to me there was a pushkin on the Rebbe's table. You know those big pushkins in 770, those metal pushkins. And the question was what to do with the pushkin. And there was a whole debate what to do with that. The Rebbe is coming in for Mincha and the pushkin is sitting there. We have to move the pushkin. It's muktzeh. And there was a whole thing. And the Rabbi Marlo was standing there davening ba'avodah kedat kebakedesh. And the Bochum came over to him and started debating with him. And he wouldn't answer. And he was only smiling, listening to the Bochum, to everything. Of course, about 20 minutes before Mincha, the Bochum came running. He said, Shnaim sha'asu p'turim. They ran to push away, and everything was fine. And he knew that's going to happen anyway, so he wasn't bothering to give explanation. I could find him going back. So that was what you asked. The Rebbe explained it. Not mokin kavua. The Mele because the Rebbe said there's not enough place. And the Rebbe said he's sitting there because it's closest to come in from the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe from Leili say al Rosh Am, not to make it harder on the Eilam. So Mele, the Rebbe said that he's sitting there, and because there's not enough place in 770 upstairs for the Bochum to learn, he wants the Bochum to stay there. But I never said in that place. Upon him, that
this was on Simchas Torah Membez?
No, it wasn't Simchas Torah. It was one of the Shabbosim now. I just want to mention when he gave this probably before he gave to Mashiach.
Before you continue, it's a schus to mention the person who built that bench, Rebbe Arnak Blosovsky. It's a great student that he has. He should be gesund, and hopefully he can join us later on the program. He was involved with furniture then, and he was zeichet to build that bench for the Rebbe, which the Rebbe used for many years to come. Chaim.
Just to mention one more thing about Mashiach. The for Mashiach was the big shturim of Shibana Beis Hamikdash. Everyone knows the song Shibana Beis Hamikdash. When the whole song started, it was like Beimem and Beis. And when Chatchila the Ganze, it was a rally on Beimem and Beis. Was not supposed to be a rally. Shabbat the Rebbe said he's not going to speak. But the Lepel Mamish, the Rebbe, Nevul Lateva, it could change. The Rebbe changed it, and the Rebbe came down. And by the end of the Sikha, the last Sikha, the Rebbe said, as Farana Nigen, when he gave of the tefillah from the Rosh Hashanah Hamikdash, and the Rebbe said, "We start kennen dem Nigen." Und Sof Kosov, the Rebbe said, "The Wörter sind unsere," und Sof Kosov, the Nigen is unsere. And when the Rebbe finished the Sikha, there was a whole tumult pushing the Nigen. I remember I was standing in a group walking with Avon Free. People were pushing him to go, and he didn't want to be sure he can go. And someone was running to Lipski. He was the musician, and somehow the Lashevsky was found. And he went up and he sang the first time the Nigen. And immediately, as soon as he started, the Rebbe started clapping with the hand. I'm finishing can't hand him. He was like, that was going. And that's how the Nigen started. And the biggest, to me, the biggest surprise was, it's Beis Sivan. The Rebbe came to us, was also a Putznik verbringen.
Rabbi, Greenberg, before you get to Beis Sivan, so from that verbringen on every single weekday verbringen, the Rebbe would ask the Chazan Talshevsky to start to Shibana?
I think it started, I don't know if the Talshevsky started, but the Shibana, the Rebbe started to sing the Shibana, right? The Shibana started almost every verbringen from then on.
To add something?
But I don't know if Talshevsky said it or not, but what I remember is Beis Sivan, the Rebbe came into the verbringen, was a Shai verbringen, that's the Shibana Beis Hamikdash. So nobody thought of anything. I mean, those who stood behind the Rebbe maybe so. But the Pearl Mamish, as soon as the Elon finished Boruch Hamikdash, the Rebbe started by Da, and the whole place stood up. It was such a shock to the Elon. No Nigen Far Maimer. That was the Nigen Far Maimer, Shibana Beis Hamikdash. I remember till now the shock. Even though probably those who stood behind saw the Rebbe taking the handkerchief and so on, but people were not thinking, because you used to, if there is a Maimer, there must be a Nigen for a Maimer. Was the Shibboleth Hamikdash, and the Rebbe started immediately. So there was a Sturm, that year was a Sturm the year in Ali Inyonim. And if we had more time, I'll just say one thing about Simchas Torah. That year, Simchas Torah, Lamed Vav, when I was by the Rebbe, I was under the table with the kids, and I saw the Rebbe's hakafas from Mamish. You know, when you everyone who was by the Rebbe knows that there is a huge chiluk where you stood in 770. How close you stood to the Rebbe. It was a huge chiluk. So that's Simchas Torah Lamed Vav. I was Mamish under the table. Mama with the Rebbe's feet. And I remember how the Rebbe used to make with his head, the Rebbe used to put his hand on the Rashag. I remember that the Rebbe used to put, maybe Rabbi Stone, if you remember, or father remember, the Rebbe used to put the Rebbe used to take his sharvul, his sleeve, and put it on the Rashag's, remember that? I don't know what the pshat on that. Pshat can be revealed, but I think that's what I remember from the box in the bleeding cup. Anyway, the Rebbe used to make with his head, the Rebbe's face was shining, and it's hard to describe the Rebbe's face with Chaser Ba'akofes. And the Rebbe made to every parameter and then to the kids. Mamish equal, to the same way. Made the parameters, but to the kids. So I remember that. So in days I came to 770. I said I must be next to the Rebbe's, next to the Ches. I was standing there, but after that year I never stood there. Why? Because as mentioned before, the Rebbe spoke 2 sichers Leil Shmini Atzeres. There's like 2 sichers Leil Simchas Torah. And from that place it was harder to hear. So after that year, I changed, and I was standing every Simchas Torah by the Rebbe's bima from the davening. However, that's Simchas Torah. When the Rebbe finished, the Rebbe came out of the chet after the kafir. So the custom is to be the people used to scream the Lebene Barayor, and the Rebbe used to say Amen. Anyway, the Rebbe came to the beginning of the shvil, and the shvil used to be full with people, and literally you have to throw out bodies to be able to let the Rebbe go back. But the Rebbe is standing and waiting because there was no way to go. The Rebbe had to wait. But I'm standing mamish next to the Rebbe, and I see people scream down by Yor. Was a 70-year-old boy. So I said quietly, not quiet, loud, but not screaming. I said the Rebbe by Yor, and the Rebbe didn't bechal move. Like it was like, it was like the second thought to me. The Rebbe was telling me, it's not for you, it's not for kids. It's for elder chassidus. But then, what I remember, how the Rebbe was holding this small sefer Torah with both hands like this, and the way the Rebbe stood, and I was mamish standing so close, the Rebbe's face, you felt the Rebbe was not there. There was such a reimimus. I was standing next to the Rebbe. There was such a reimimus at that moment. The Rebbe stood as the Rebbe didn't see the shvil, didn't see the people. He wasn't there b'chlal. And it felt you saw what made the Sefer Rebbe. So just our personal memory. And then after that, all the years I was standing on the other side. And Take, when you stood by the Rebbe's Omad, by the bima next to the Rebbe's wall, it was very hard. It was not easy to see the covers. Of course, when it came in Ches, it was already a bima, and this was much easier. But the years before, just one more word, and then. One more word about, based on what we gesagt the ganze Vergangenheit is kein Minisch der Rabbi, 40 Jahre. So first of all, the Rebbe grabbed the Welt Schokotzach and Kesseler, why it's important to write every letter, every Jew letter secretary. As a bocher, you live in 770, you didn't realize the Welt Schokotzach and Kesseler. It's now 40 years later today when you're in the real world. And you see today with Corona and everything what's going on with the Welt Schokotzach and Kesseler, you understand what's made of the Rebbe Zog. As jeder Reiner was wahrscheinlich a secretary, and had the Rebbe, even when it came to, if you remember, Rabbi remembers, after Tishrei went up, the Rebbe had a private yichidus, secretive yichidus with the Askonim Platzisol, Rabbi Medanchik and the Shvemovsky, and so when a big sword, then we heard it was about the Rebbe sending a machin a secretary for Tal, for the Israeli army, by the IDF, and nobody should know about it, and to have permission from Tzal, with the Rav from Tzal, all thing. Then summer, beginning of summer, when there was something going on in Israel, but Fabregan, the Rebbe said, as it was a Hayalim were falling, the Rebbe said, because I'm not geton with the Sefer Torah from Tzal, we must gedafton, or das nicht geschehen. And what was misdared because it was all delayed, Tzal wasn't agreeing, the Rav was big chochmet, what the whole thing going on there till they finally happened.
Rabbi Greenberg, can you translate that, please?
What?
Can you translate that?
Translate what?
What the Rebbe said.
The Rebbe said as if everybody, if the Askonim would complete, would start to prepare in time, and the Rebbe told them the Chayalim would not die on the front. That means that when we didn't understand, I was a kid, we didn't understand what's made of the Rebbe Zog Machas of Tere. The Rebbe Poshet hat geraten mit dem jüdischen Volk in der ganzen Welt. We didn't understand what made the Rebbe Zog of Tere. The whole time, a Rebbe of Tere, a Mifta von Rebbe. It's not a Mifta von Rebbe. When the Rebbe sagt a Sach, the Rebbe Poshet meant to keep sure that the Rebbe protected the entire Yiddish world, the protected his world not to fall apart. And the fact of a son is before, I'm schreiben, it's very important, as the Rebbe sagt a Sach, Hein, and we said the Welt fährt voneinander, the Rebbe's Werte, die ich kann lernen, we have to make the Sefer and Tage, nicht das Sefer, wie man getan, etwas ab. Moshe, the Rebbe said, one of the Rabbi remembers, one of the Rabbi, the Rebbe said, as a feeble die, was sich verschrieben, Mashiach Sefer, in der Rebbe, der schwert geist, nach der Sefer, darf man sich verschreiben, noch einmal, Chadoshim Abkorim, noch einmal Itzter, in der Sefer von 8. Saison. That means that what they did in Kronites, the Baal Shem Tov Sefer Torah, it's a great Sache. Mashiach Sefer Torah is a great Sache. Mashiach Sefer Torah, was kann gleich sein von da? Aber der Rebbe, als der Rebbe heißt, machen sie, ach, das ist so, darf ich machen, geht Baal Shem Tov Sefer Torah. Das machen Sefer Torah, ach, das ist so, der Rebbe geht. Das ist eine Sache, der Rebbe sagt, das ist die Sache, darf ich machen. Baal Shem Tov ist eine große Sache und Mashiach Sefer Torah ist eine große Sache. But that's not, that's the Rebbe say, oh, bitte Sefer Torah. I'm just saying, with that verstehen, and the Rebbe gives a word, it's not a word. Das ist eine Sache, was Mamesh keeps the whole world together. Und der Vater Rebbe sagt, Pikuach Nefesh, the Rebbe sees it, we don't see it. The Rebbe says, Pikuach Nefesh, every 8 years. What does that mean? The Rebbe Poshet, Nirate Beged Miden. Not a joke. And then there's one more thing about Koyesh at the Rabbi is a von, the Rebbe said, for bringing Membeis, they never understood, and because I happened to be Misazik in Ainyan, I understood it. So that's interesting vote. The Rebbe said, maybe I was only remembers, als wird auch durch ein Telisches Forum mit der Baal Shem Tov und der Gilgul von der Rasad. Und was hat die going? The Rebbe right away said that I said to someone about a unit from the Telishes Forum, he said, Chagas. So the Rebbe said, I told him, every person has Chabad and he has Chagas also. So Chagas is the Sache. So then the Rebbe said a interessante word, which I was puzzled for 40 years what it meant. The Rebbe said, I'm schreiben, when we're going to print the Sicha, he's going to print the Anocha, and Melach maybe remembers that. When we get schreiben the Anocha, noch Shabbos, we should write, I'm not me'asher and not me'vatul. I'm not me'asher, I'm not saying that Sidazeh, I'm not saying that the Asezemes, as the Bashem is a guilt from Rasag, and I'm not me'vatul, that he is not. So what is it? Yes and nicht. What does it mean? I'm not Na'asher and Mevatel. The Rebbe accepted or not accepted. Then Shabbos later, in the Anoche, in the Ores, was geschrieben, it's not the bewusste Meise, but Shem is a guild from the Eden Tzvas. Everyone knows about he was a guild from the Tzvas, and then there is another sefer that a guild from Nishmas Chanech, and the Anoche drops a sefer that says that, and the Rebbe, they also the Rachaim, that if the Rachaim would go to the throne, the Baal Shem Tov, or meets, he's Nefesh the David, and he's Ruach the David. So what does that mean? The Rebbe gave a whole Sicha. The Rebbe explained, Faran Tvei Inyan Migilgulim. Faran Neshama Yishana, an old Neshama that comes back to this world. That's a Gilgul, a regular Gilgul. Then the Faran Inyan and Gilgul, the Rebbe said, as in Isgarga Neshama, mitzad Inyan Miyuched, but this Neshama needs to Ustad. It means that the Rebbe said, the Baal Shem Tov is Inyan Miyuched. He also add on Gilgul from this Inyan, but the Baal Shem Tov himself is not a Gilgul. So I still never understood what exactly it meant. So lately I found a Fabrengen from Haolami with Gimel, and the Rebbe said that the Erste Sicher, the Rebbe says, and it's why we say it, because in Teres Menachem, they changed it. Teres Menachem, they're printing now the Sicher, they changed it. Why they changed? Because they never understood. They never thought that could be such a thing. The Rebbe said, the Rebbe spoke about the unit from the Alter Rebbe, the Neshama Chadosha. When the Rebbe spoke the Loshem about the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe said, both of them Neshama Chadoshas. And in Teres Menachem, they took it out because nobody ever heard about Shem Neshama Chadosha, so they wrote the Alter Rebbe Neshama Chadosha. If I check with the other Anocha from Arle Goldstein, also the Neshama Chadosha. And in Sichas Kedish, I printed the Neshama Chadosha. So I went to look into it. So the Lepel, I found out that there's a few other places the Rebbe it comes out from the Rebbe as the Baal Shem Tov was also some kind of a Neshama Chadosha. So it could be the pshat what the Rebbe said in the Fabringen, as is not me'asher and not mevatel, as take what the Rasag is a gilgul, and also the gilgul from the Rapsari going, it's true, but not like a gilgul from a regular person, which is an Neshama Yishona that the Rasari going to gave in this world. Baal Shem Tov is, the Rebbe said, the Rebbe quoted in the Fabringen, the Remender Ladoka said, as the Baal Shem Tov was miyuchad, and he said, min akadmeinim lahoya kamoy. That's from the kadmeinim. He said, the Rebbe mentioned that from Avoritz Liyanke, min akadmeinim lahoya kamoy. That means that he definitely was a neshama chadasha, but not maybe in the same level that the Rebbe. But I finally understood what the Rebbe said as anish me'asher, anish me'batl, meaning as a take the Baal Shem Tov is. The Rasag maybe was in a Baal Shem Tov, but not as a regular Gilgal. Baal Shem Tov neshama chadasha, and the naive Rasag was with them mechubet them. And I can those are some avot, and we can say that the other word for him is the Tifkeit, Emek Basar Emek, and now it's starting the 40 years, the Ersh beginning. I mean, cooked up to the Sichas and Tavshim and Beis, and Mamish is endless what we can get in the Anyway, Chaim L'chaim.
Yeah, Rabbi Greenberg, L'chaim. Want to get back to you soon, don't leave. Another bacher who was a 15-year-old bacher in the year Tavshin Mem Beis, which hopefully the purpose of today's panel is actually to encourage all the bachrim, light and all anash to be learning this the kviyas of this year of Tavshin Mem Beis, to go through the entire year. We have with us the Asra of Kilos Chabad in Chicago, Rabbi Baruch Hertz, who was zeichet to be by the Rebbe in Tavshin Mem Beis, and we'd like him to say a few words about that tekufa. Shekayach Rabbi Hertz.
I'd rather listen than speak. I enjoyed hearing the whistle, but I would maybe add, not on the level of Hatmimim or explain the shittas. I'll just speak in a certain point, an angle which affected me personally. The first Tishrei I was Tavshin Mem, full Tishrei, the Mem Aleph, the Mem Beis. Mem Beis, I came from Yisroel. I was in Shuvas Teresemis, 15 years old, and I came for that year, for the month of Tishrei. And after Tishrei, I went back to Yisroel. So I'll say a few things which maybe it was touched upon, but maybe on a personal note. Number one, I remember Mem Aleph, we all know Hakel, there was a Sikha every night, and the Rebbe, it was a Giluyim. I came in Beis, Sukkos, nobody was clear, at least I did not know, and many did not know, if the Rebbe will continue having a Sikha every night. And it wasn't clear. I personally remember being in the front of 770, and the Rebbe that time turned around and started the Sikha. Yontim started the Sikha. B'chlal, you should know the Sikha Sukkos was a very different Gilear. B'chlal, the way the Rebbe looked, there's a certain closeness. The Rebbe was Tzol Upanov, there was a certain look b'chlal the Rebbe, and also the style Sikha was b'chlal different style for bringing. So right away that night there was a lot of pushing, and it was mamish like I remember it was pushing because people were not ready for the Sikha. They thought it was a special thing of Hakel, but no one really thought it would be necessarily a hemshech. I remember following then, we saw that there would be a new Seder in the Sikhas. So the following day, we waited in 770, and right after davening, probably up a whole night, the Rebbe then spoke about, and after the morning, and after davening, the minute the people on the front benches left, myself and other Bachrim ran to grab places. And for those years, I had for many, many years Tishrei, from Mem Beis on, all the way through the nuns, I had a place, the fourth row, and we got it after davening to hold the place, and we turned around, left a few minutes, but every day we were there the whole day till the Sikha. And in a way, there's a few nekudas of Sikha. B'chal the Sikhas, then the Sukkos, when Beis was started, that it was the Rebbe's. After the Sikha, there was groups of Chazara someone touched upon it, but it was unbelievable. People were chazering Sikha again and again at the place. But Pasha, you never saw that this seer of the Chazara Sikhas, you never saw this any other time in that level, in those years. Maybe late in the noons, that kind of thing. But that level, the people much stayed for an hour or two in Chazar the Sikhas, and it was the energy of the whole week. And I remember and every year there was a chiddush with it. The Shpis that were tied in, and every Bechlal from in base started. You saw there was a mahalach in the sichas. They tied in with the Rashi, with the Yom. This year, from base, they tied in with the chiddush to the day. The next year was another mahalach. And the mahalchim really went a certain direction. Akadekach, I remember that the sichas was the energy that Matzah Yontiv, after 2 days, nights, not sleeping and being, up a whole night, and then doing little molester, waiting in line 6 a.m. for the first tickets, and then going, and then the whole time, someone said you can listen to the Sikha clearer upstairs, because the Rebbe didn't use a microphone downstairs, but there was a hookup upstairs in the base of Medrash. You could hear it. I wasn't interested, because being the front there, that experience alone of those sikhs, the Rebbe said, and the sikhs, the words were very special. That's just one nakuda which I can share for people who, it's not on the esoteric level, just in the eyes of a 15-year-old bacha, it was a very meaningful thing. I want to say one more thing about the tkufa of Sekretariat, which Michoel, I know someone mentioned it started Chanukah emissaries, the big shturm, the Kesicha, and it was Erev Shana, and Michoel that year also, the Rebbe didn't daven with the Olam, every daven in the morning, but Slichas, because it was the Kriyas Rosh Hashanah was Tuesday, Wednesday, there was a long Slichas that Rebbe came then, and every day 7 o'clock in the morning daven the Rebbe. So the whole Tishrei had that kind of thing. When it's Torah, the big Sikha, I mean, there was many Sikhs. The whole every time the Rebbe mentioned Torah, the Rebbe mentioned Torah. But Yud Gimel Tishrei, that was mamish. I remember that was mamish stirred very strongly, and he spoke about he said even so much on money. He said even what's a pella is that even the Meisters spoke about Misrifka and Hatmimim, they could have started a Torah. The people complaining. I get reports of 50, 100, and they don't understand that they take $1. They can even think about it. What Kaspi? It's not about money. It's like Achtus, the Kol Kal Yisroel, and it's an unbelievable Indian. However, even if you want to go in the grubber seichel of money, you still could understand it, and it was very sturdy at that time. Bechal, and I was when I pointed that every time mentioned, we had the Yechidus. I went back to Teres Emes. Bechal then. The Yechidus practice were already finished, and the Yechidus was in the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe's room, groups went to the Rebbe's room. What before was in the Beis Medrash, it was upstairs in Tachten, and then later went to downstairs in 770. But then it was in the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe's room we went in a whole group of Bachrim Teres Emes, 60 years old, and the Rebbe then in the Yechidus mentioned again the Sefer Torah. Pasha became the Indian of it was clear. Wow, it was clear, Baruch Hachamo, that it was actually something that Rebbe wanted on a very sturdy way. I just say something which I mean today you can read all the Fabrengens. I'll tell you personally, the bracha of the Bachrim was Erev in Kippur. Erev in Kippur, age 15, I was not in the room. I was in the sukkah outside. I went right after the bracha klali, which was the Rebbe gave the bracha, and then immediately went there to grab a place, and it was right in the front of the sukkah. I remember then the Rebbe spoke about then. Every year was something different. That year the Rebbe spoke about Ufaratsta, and he said Avodas Ufaratsta. He said a couple kind of pomim. Like in the following year, the Rebbe said Neiros Lahar. There's different things, but that year the Rebbe clearly said Ufaratsta, and it was clear that the Rebbe wanted that Parasli should do in a big way, which I can tell you, Akadekach in Tishrei, when the Bach would come for the whole month, there was times that you were busy, but that time when the Torah started, I remember Yossi Reichik, all of Sholom, got buses, and he used to take Bachrim on buses, like for Chabad in California, he was taking buses. I think that was the first buses that went out, and these true people were buying letters like crazy. It was unbelievable. You saw Pashit that there was such an excitement in the world about Yosef and Torah, that it was unbelievable. And continue when I was later at Yisroel, you had so many people, Kesseler and different Rebbes were all signing for it, and people were buying thousands of letters. It wasn't something you had a mitzvah to beg people. When we used to go Pashit on the Shabbos and 3 times, and the Rebbe shtul the whole year. I remember even Shavuos time, Mamash the morning, so the whole day till Mamash till the convention, selling ISIS, and people were buying on every level. I never saw personally a mitzvah like that, which the world was so excited about, and there was so many, and there was tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. People were buying Pashit letters, and Torah after Torah was being completed. People were Pashit buying it in a very, very huge way, which was another thing on base. Another thing, just say one more nakuda, mentioned before, that year, I remember the Fabrengen Rebbe spoke about the luchis, the menorah, all the different things, which was revolutionary, because I remember luchis, people started changing wherever they were. A lot of the Lubavitcher shuls had luchis nabrabua, and right away the preiches, people taking it down and changing it. That was the time and base that Rebbe changed it. One of the things that Rebbe Fabrengen spoke about a few times, and it's all from memory, that Michoel, he said that he was talking there about l'chaim, it's saying 4 times. Rebbe said that you should take a mashka and have a little bit of l'chaim, and then so the shaila is, what do you do the rest of the bottle? You can't drink so much mashka with the rest of the bottle. You make sure that many yidden will say l'chaim with the mashka, and nishta kavana is to leave the bottle of a Pesach, and then you have a shaila of chamash over a Pesach. If it's on the guy, the shaila is to finish the bottle and make sure many yidden, I think, and explained that it's like a mayan. A mayan is a well. When you have a mayan, even one drop of water is matar the whole thing, and then it's like a well, and the Rebbe then tied it into the Torah again. Tied in the Torah again and said that Yiddish buys one letter. Even the Rebbe explained in the Pilpul that it's not really writing a whole Torah. It's mash from the Torah. Every Yid needs a letter in the Torah. When you're buying a letter, your mamash has a shaykh the whole Torah. Without your letter, the whole Torah can't exist. And he spoke many times that it's different. And I mentioned 4 different, like Sefer Torah writings. This is partially in Achtis Yisrael. When at that time bringing Simchas Torah, because of the whole Tkufa, which was then Bechlal, there was Masira Shtachim and this, the Rebbe was screaming then, and the Rebbe spoke about then again that he doesn't realize tied in again to the Torah, one letter, one yid, one piece of Yisroel. It was all about the Nakuda that a yid has an erech of 1, and you see Taka that in this thing there was such an acceptance in the world that it was an unbelievable way. There's just a few nakudas of Tishrei. There's obviously a lot of things. I can say one more thing. I remember that year was the first time that I ever went on steps on Napoleon's march, and it's interesting that even though it seemed like in a way it was changed because in the past I never climbed in a chair, however, the simcha was not in any way less, and the Rebbe was unbelievable. That base specifically, I remember, was the Rebbe was very, the tnu was very strong, and they were in the most unbelievable way. Bechlal, we should know that year, as the Rebbe introduced Simchas Torah, the whole Simchas Torah, he was talking about the 7 days of dancing in the streets. That was a whole. It seemed like a whole new Seder in Lubavitch and a whole new kibush in the world. And that's just Stadt.
Rabbi Hertz, what changed that the Rebbe changed from the chair to the stairs?
You know why it changed? Mm-hmm. I was 15 years old. I can't answer the question. I'll be very honest with you. I'm sure the grace of I mean, there's a Gashmis that can answer. I think the Gashmis that can answer, which made my grab a seichel, but I don't know more than that. I only say what I know. In the eyes of a 15-year-old bacher.
Can you describe the scene from the eyes of a 15-year-old bacher of Napoleon's march from from before the Kaddish, and then the Rebbe
Okay.
moved on to the stairs.
I'll tell you something very, very poshut. I was 15 years old, and a 15-year-old bacha is not a strong. So the entire Yom Kippur, I was the bracha. I pushed by the front of the sukkah, had the bracha of the bracha. The entire day I stood. Entire day. Begashmas urucha. Then I played. He stood in the front, and then I pushed from after the end the best of my ability. You know, it's like not. I remember when I was young and I first came, I tried to make my own place for tekiyas. I thought I'll have a gesisa b'shas ma'isa, but I said that has to happen. It's not the best place. It was pashut the thing. Well, bacha, you know, a little kid pushing, but I can tell you that as we got into mincha and the ilan and the McKenna with Paul's march, it was such an uplifting. It was unbelievable. And Rebbe, if I remember correctly, it's all from memory, the Avinu Makena was very long that year. The Avinu Makena was very long, and the Rebbe Chlal, it wasn't stam. The Tnuus was very long. The Rebbe at that time, some years the Rebbe's talis was Chlal closed. I'm just telling you, it's all from. But that year, if I remember the Rebbe's talis was not closed. You could see the Rebbe right away. And I know you can correct me if I'm. It's all mamish from, but and it was such a kiruv that you almost felt like it was an unbelievable kiruv. That's one. That's I can say. I want to say one more thing because you're asking also. B'chlal Shminat Atzeres, the many years I had was opposite in 70. Now I know that I was spoke sichas. That year punked. Later years, I had a much better place, but it wasn't so close. But it was much better. But you couldn't hear a sikha. The noise was too high. I don't know who heard. Maybe the al-Chayzrim right near there. But I remember Gashmias. Bechlali should know. I mean, for people who were Simchas Torah, there's a lot of people in 770. It was much harder to hear the sikha pushing. It was much harder to hear. The sikha before Akofis, Shmoneh Atzeres, was very hard to hear. That year, I was happy to be closer. And I remember some of the nekudas of that sikha. But I'm saying Michoel was also the chiddush. I was talking sikha because the Rebbe Michoel, I don't remember then. I don't remember much after. Maybe if I'm correct, I'm not. I don't remember the Shmoneh Atzeres by night should be Michoel sichas. 3 sichas. I don't remember. So that was an unbelievable thing. And also the Isis in the sichas was very strong. There was very strong betuyim in those sichas.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Hertz. L'chaim. The ruach of Simchas Torah lasts through the next couple of weeks and months and throughout the year. L'chaim to you.
L'chaim bracha.
Rabbi Slanin from Binghamton. Was there anything you wanted to add before that you didn't have a chance to? About the Eisp Torah signing up people Yidden Erev Shabbos. And I think you mentioned to me earlier on the phone that the Rebbe wanted a doch before every Erev Shabbos.
Yes, and I mentioned it before when I spoke. I just want to correct myself about what I said before. The Rebbe spoke about luchas in, I think it was Shabbos Tisa Tovshem Mimalev, and then again Simchas Torah in the end of the Farbringen, and about the Menorahs, Yitake spoke in summer Tovshem and Beis, many from 3 or 4 Farbringens in the summer of Membeis, just to correct, because I was wrong when I said before. Yeah, the Rebbe wanted a duch every Friday. And it was like he used to ask, and I remember sometimes Binyamin, a label coming out, going to Reb David's office and asking the Rebbe Vaad of Duch. It was one Friday that I remember that it was winter, and we were still waiting for Bachim to come back from Mifzoim and to give it in, and we wanted to give. What a greater number is more nachas from Rebbe. And the Rebbe was waiting because he had to, as usually Friday, he used to go home for a few minutes, like later Friday, late afternoon, and then come back right before Lichtbenchen. So it was mamish in the winter. It was, I would say, probably a half hour before Adlokas Neris, and we were. And label came like with Kaist, Rebbe Vaad, I can't till he gets the duch. So we just gave it in. And then when the Rebbe came back, we gave another there was then, I think, a few hundred more that were able to get in the 15, 20 minutes from Mitzrayim. And for this Duch, I think Reb David got a answer of on the Skabel, which was Vogel. But this was it's what gesehen about dem Rebbe, das gewende Gerbe Nefesh, dem Indien to verschreiben, was mehr reden in this Sefer Torah.
I remember hearing from Nuchi Gross, who was also very involved then, that Erev Yom Kippur that year, Tavshin Beis, the Rebbe was waiting for my grandfather to receive the final numbers of until that point. So we just see the chavivos of how much the Rebbe had in regards to getting the numbers and everything else connected to that. Rabbi Vogel, I see you're shaking your head. Is there something you want to add? So if you can please unmute Rabbi Vogel. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I'm just shaking my head and following. It's very, very interesting. But I was then in London actually for Gimel Tishrei, and I remember the phone call came from Mazkiris, and they said that the Rebbe wants to know a duch besides what was Erev Yom Kippur. The Rebbe wants to know an extra number, anything which was added, amount of Yidden who were added, and more, in other words, more letters in Sefer Torah which were bought between Erev Yom Kippur when they gave him the last duch and Yud Gimel Tishrei. And we sort of understood that Mustama the Rebbe was going to speak about it on Yud Gimel Tishrei. That was a whole sturm. There's another word I just want to mention, since I have the microphone right now, that the Indian of what's the word, the ois packen, the peklach from Tishrei, the Rebbe used to say that you have to unload your merchandise that you got during Tishrei. If I remember correctly, it was Chanukah Tashim and Beis that the Rebbe said that now we're in the process of unpacking what the merchandise that you got during Tishrei. I think it's the only time I heard the Rebbe referring to that in the middle of the year.
Oh, yes, one main aspect of Tavshin Mem Beis, which wasn't really discussed by Riches, was, of course, it was the Rebbe's Shnas HaShmenim. Tavshin Samach Beis, Tavshin Mem Beis, it's Shmenim Shana. So, Rabbi Vogel, I don't think you were in America then. You come from Yof Nissen?
No. I was in England then.
Right, but now, did you hear the Sicha when the, actually, I'd rather ask Rabbi Slanim. Rabbi Slanim, do you remember the Sicha the Rebbe asked not to come for the Shnas HaShmenim and then all those weeks leading up to Yof Nissen?
It was during a Kinus for Tzivis Hashem, Rosh Chodesh Nissen. So towards the end of the Kinus, so the Rebbe spoke the Sicha. What happened afterwards? You have many Gesoras, what people did.
What did the Rebbe say in that Sicha?
That Azevim gekleibt sich to come here, whatever, and he gave reasons why not to come. It's before Pesach, and it's money, and a lot of reasons why not to come, and no reason to come. But those who was some verstanden was mit darf tun. How do we know? Because Yudalef Nissen by Fabrengen, before the Rebbe gave the Tanyas, he explained that he's giving the Tanyas for Divazanin because he, as the Eden was am Zachmatir given, gekommen dort to be together, so he's giving the Tanyas. In Chetchen is befrot is die Shluchim was am gebring große Kvutzes, was am gat große Keruvim, but
I remember, and on this note, I remember once hearing from Rabbi Shimka Lazarov that he was here for Yof Nissen. So when he came to Sunday, Rabbi Chadagav said, "What is this?" The Rebbe Doch said that people shouldn't come in, shluchim in general, not shouldn't come in for Yof Nissen. So he tells him, "What should I do? I came to buy fish for Yom Tov." And he said, "I never saw Rabbi Chadagav laugh so hard." So obviously it was Niskabel, and of course everyone received the Tanya from the Rebbe that Fabringen. If you don't mind discussing that very, very rare occurrence.
Don't you need another panel before you Yudalef Nissen and Beis?
Listen, we'll go on until the next one. Firstly, did you know before the Fabringen that the Rebbe would be giving out Tanyas?
course.
I think the Rebbe mentioned it that the Shabbos before, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I don't think so. But they knew that they printed, but they didn't know if the Rebbe himself is going to give it, or because the Tishrei Lametes, every Eirach and Shluchim for yeshivas, like I was there, Shliach in Seattle, Washington, all the Orchim and the Shluchim got a Tanya from the Rebbe, with the Rebbe's Chasimas Yad Koche in the Tanya. So there wasn't sure the Tanyas are printed if the Rebbe himself is going to give everyone, or it's going to be like Tavshim Dalet, the Rebbe gave it out through the Keil Jungelite. There was also a Tanya Yadalef Nissen, but it was through Keil Jungelite.
Right. Wow. So the Rebbe sat until what time, giving out Tanyas to Anoshim, Noshim, B'Tav?
I think till about 5:30, 5:45. Then he went home, came back, went to the mikveh, went to the oil, came back, another verbringen.
I think the Rebbe heard Kriya in the Zal before he left. Is that correct? Went upstairs first to hear Kriya. I think it was a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi Vogel, can you correct me? It's Thursday, Yafnis? Levi, can you please unmute Rabbi Vogel? Rabbi Vogel.
Checking Chabad.org.
Oh, he's checking Chabad.org. Anyways,
No, your Dolphinus in that year was on Sunday.
On Sunday, okay.
So Monday there became the Kesseler, and unusually the Belkaira was Mendelbaum.
So Rabbi David Mendelbaum lane for the Rebbe that Monday morning.
If I'm not mistaken, that's what I heard from some people. And so the Rebbe gave out Tanyas till I think after 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Rebbe came out to Kesseler at 6:30. What I heard from people, I wasn't there, but that's what I heard. If you look at the video afterwards, I mean, it's amazing. The next Fabrengen, early Yud Gimel, and the Rebbe claps over there by Al Achas. It's amazing. The Shturim, the way the Rebbe's clapping, you never believe it's this a person who just turned 80 and physically working from Sunday morning till Monday night, not stopping for a moment. It's an amazing scene. You see if you watch the video. I mean, I was then in London, and so also big Shturim, people wanted to go, and was haste, and he can't go. Even it was Zalman Jaffe who got permission from the Rebbetzin to come. So he said that his Enikel, Rabbi Yossi Lu, I think he's watching now, or listening. So he got, he also wanted to come. So the Rebbetzin said, how can you compare his Zayda to him? So the Rabbi Zalman Jaffe understood from the Rebbetzin that friends, special friends can come. They have permission to come.
The Rebbetzin said something like, nicht dir haben gemeint, or something, like, nicht gute Freund.
That's
very special.
Yeah.
The Gem just released this year, actually, a video of Yonaf Nissen and Beis. Rebbe arriving to 770. Did you see it?
Not yet.
Or I think it's Rabbi Klein driving before the car actually stops. The back door flies open, and the Rebbe comes out like, rejuvenated. The Yonaf Nissen in the morning.
Wow.
It was a very special. It's a very special tzir to see. All right, I think we're going to conclude today's panel. Just to hear closing words from our panelists. I'm not sure if they're all around still, but Rabbi Gurevitch, if you can give some divrei seirus of learning Tashim and Beis and living with the Rebbe this year as we start the Kviyas exactly how it was 40 years ago. Elimelech, if you can please unmute Elimelech. 1 second, you're still muted. Levi, you still there? Just 1 second. Can Rabbi Gurevitch please be unmuted?
Hey, now?
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, thank you to everyone, l'chaim. And the Pashut Nekuda is a very simple thing, that from Membeis, Bias Moshiach, we got, when you learn the Maimer Basilagani from Yud Aleph, but the Rebbe brings the concept of Adera Shvi, that everything is more practical in Adera Shvi and all of that. And the Rebbe brings it weiter and weiter, and we have to, als Shluchim, the Rebbe's Kinder, you have to work and basically bring it to the point as the Rebbe's Lord Nachas and the Rebbe's language in this is Zenzach Dodlam Ato, in Hertz Hashem, Moshiach Zal Shem Kumen, and that's it. This is basically what we all need. And if you're talking about Membeis and the Sichas over there, with the Uftubutun, whether it's a Sefer Torah, whether the Rebbe read about in Sefer Torah, which is Achdus Yisroel, Vogel, and in one of the Sichas is with the Bochum have to, when they go, this is actually from previous years, the Bochum have to go and, Mefid Zayin, Vogel, and Ufton, bringing some, in Yud Aleph, to bring some people to 770 from those shuls. Think about it. This was all then. And what's now? Now it's 4 years later after Membeis, but the Rebbe started, I feel that the Nusach Hashanah, the Shem Hashanah, is Bias Moshiach. And now we are 4 years later, and we need place in this. Yes, whatever is happening in the world. When we know the MS, Kamen should play from them. You can't run away from it. And the MS is by us, and the Rebbe speaks so much about that we get it from the Rebbe, that we know the Derech HaEmes, and Derech HaEmes is Poshet in the Flernen, Mefid Zayin Chassidus, and bringing Chassidus to everyone, and bring everyone closer to Yiddishkeit and closer to the Rebbe, v'chulu. The Rebbe wrote Avos Yisroel to everyone, okay? And this is a big deal on its own, just when you read some Ikras Kedesh, v'chulu, this is Merendig. Anyway, just to make the point, to organize, you want me to finalize this whole thing, is, again, the Junge Chavre, the Bochum of our time, and they all have to do what the Rebbe wants, and know that, and often more and more. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim Elimelech, Shekayach. Just to ask Rabbi Slonim. Rabbi Slonim, you discussed earlier about making a hachlata at this kinnis, at this panel, this Fabringen, about actually being Messiah, Sefer Torah. L'chaved all the Talmidei Yeshivas Teim Hatmimim. If you can please be Messiah this Fabringen and give us some divinity sereros to continue this whole year.
Chaim.
Chaim.
The Seirus is kipshutoi. When the Bachim, and I think that's what the achlata from the Vaad Hatmimim was, that Bachim should learn this year. Every Zachkochen, whenever there was a Shabbos verbringen, not all Shabbosim from Membeis there was Shabbos verbringens, but Zachkochen the Shabbos verbringen and the Wochedike verbringens, they will see that one of the Eroes and Maise Bepoel in Tavshim Membeis 40 years ago was the Inyan from Sefer Torah. And Niskorim Venasim, but the Rebbe says all the time that Azach was Niskorim, Dafo Zayin Venasim, Kipshute, Memaise Bepoel. So the Seirus, just the Sichas alone will give the Seirus, but just to talk from a practical way, I think the Vaad Hatmimim is going to organize it, and it has to be done together in cooperation with Hatmimim Amerikozis and all the Snifim. But Bepoel Mamesh is poshet as the Bochim sollen reisgehen mit der Sturm und then verschreiben Tausender Eden bekol Katz v'Tevel. And I'm saying it because I'm thinking 40 years ago, Tavshim and Beis, how many Bochim were in 770 already, and how many Bochim were in all the yeshivas, and they were able to fill up a Sefer Torah within 6 or 7 months. So I think today I think we can make a deadline even of Yud Shvat to be able to finish this one Torah and then to start a second one. But Pashat Kipshute, that this should be the Bamei Avezoyot Fei of this year should be the Koch in the Rebbe Siches and the Poel Mamesh in the Minyan HaSefer Torah. The Chaim soll takazayim b'atzlocha Rabbi, and as I mentioned before, that all the brachas what the Rebbe gibt, and you can see in the Siches from the Sefer Torah, should have upcoming b'teva nira v'nigla.
Amen. Chaim, Shekayach. just to demonstrate what Rabbi Slanim was referring to, I'm sitting next to a set of Teres Menachem, and there are 4 chalakim for Teres Menachem Tashim and Beis, which it's definitely be a gleiche Zach if the Talmidei Yeshivas and all Chassidim take upon themselves this year to go through this major year, which is obviously this year's curious as well, and all the Inyanim which our Baim Shana accomplishes should definitely be accomplished in everything we do. Rabbi Vogel will be Messiah with you, unless Rabbi Greenberg is still on. I haven't seen him here, but Rabbi Vogel, please tell us some Divri Seridus, and with that we'll be Messiah this Verbringen.
I'm not used to drushes, I don't know. But I'd like to be Messiah with the words, and good to mention that this was, I think, the only time the Rebbe did this. Usually after Hakafas, the Rebbe would say Gut Yontif 3 times, and the night after Simchas Torah, Tashim and Beis, the Rebbe screamed 3 times, Daloi Golos, Daloi Golos, Daloi Golos. Everybody repeated. Then the Rebbe sang Huel Akeno. It was a chiddush from Yir Tashim and Beis. So,
Amen. Shekayach, all the organizers, Mendel Banon, Mati Slanim, Mendel Azimov, and all the other members of the Vaad Hatmimim, of course, the head, Rabbi Tzvi Shaltain, for making today's panel possible. The Abishur should help. We should all have a good year, and a Gurevitch year, and everything should go about Sachar Rabba Muflaga, and everything from the Tafshim Membes, Mem Gimel, Mem Down, all the years in the Siyas should be Nimshach in the Matam Asar Tzvachim. Achaim, Gad Yantis, and Yashakayach.
Amen.